All right, folks. Today on All Minus One, we'll be looking at the churning out of abusers by the synthetic society and the rise of men too. And I'm going to talk about, of course, by the synthetic society and the rise of men too. Well, that wasn't good. I'm going to talk about the Depp Heard case, but many other things we'll talk about. And today will probably be a pretty long one. So come join me after the intro. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome. This is All Minus One, and my name is Bill. Sorry about the beginning there. I usually have myself muted. I always leave the stream up to make sure that it's streaming, right? It started playing on YouTube and kind of messed me up, but oh well, things happen, live show and all. So today, again, we're going to be talking about abusers, how the government, how the synthetic society specifically, because it's not just our government, right? It churns out these abusers. It actually crazy makes our entire society, and things begin to break down because of that. And we can't have any clear path forward to growth. Despite what the progressives say about being progressive, they're not at all. In fact, they are regressive, they are restrictive, they are tyrants in their own right. Um, so that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about today. And this is very kind of personal to me. And I'm going to try to refrain from getting overly personal as I did the last time I streamed. I strum. You can tell I haven't done this in a while. Saying weird words that are made up. Anyways, so we're going to look at all of those things. And I'm going to show you how the government is an abuser unto itself, how the globalists are abusers unto themselves. So, before we get started, let me just remind everybody that we are streaming over on Entropy, DLive, and Rumble, as well as on YouTube. So, YouTube is not the only place. YouTube is not a safe place to be if you are a free thinker. They don't want free thinking. They're part of the abusive system. And they will continue to abuse their power and authority until the platform completely crumbles. But unfortunately, Alphabet has a lot of power and a lot of control to manipulate people. And that's what all of this stuff is really about, manipulation. Manipulation is abuse. Now, there are levels to this, but, that's pretty much how it goes. Spook, real quick to your question about going down the rabbit hole, the Methodist Church. If you look at John and Charles Wesley and their lives in the Methodist Church and the things that they taught and how they were trying to reconstruct orthodoxy, not the way the Eastern Orthodox Church is per se, but orthodoxy unto itself. The Methodists actually believe pretty much all the same major tenets as the Eastern Orthodox Church, from my understanding. But God gave that man power. There was fire in that movement. And one of the reasons why they were known as the Methodists is because they were so methodical with their studying, with their learning, and with their teaching. And my experience with that church, given that my family, my parents and my sister and all, as well as my wife, attend the local Methodist church, is those people have no idea where their faith came from. They are absolutely clueless. And this is part of the synthetic society, because this is the piecemealing of our society. People have strange synthesized beliefs that are contradictory, and we're going to speak about that very specifically today. So I want to start off with this. It's just the reality. It's I talk about it on here. I don't make a big deal about it, but it is kind of a big deal because I went through this. I lived this hellish life. I was a young man who was completely and utterly shocked of the behavior of my wife and didn't know what to do, and it nearly destroyed me. I became super depressive. I started becoming a heavy drinker. All I wanted to do was sleep all day. I did all kinds of things that were not in my character and behavior from before. And I had extreme acute anxiety to the point where some of the little mountains around here, if I drove around them, I had to slow down to like 40 or 50 miles per hour on the 70-mile-per-hour highway, or I felt like I was going to fly off of them. This is totally real. This is totally my life. This is 100% a reality of how I function today. It creates issues with relationships. It's a thing that going through and watching this trial, I had some catharsis actually in it, and was able to figure out some things, some cycles that are going on with my wife and I. And my wife is not a terrible person or an abuser or anything like that, but she has things in her past as well, and those things come up. There is a subconscious There is intrinsic things that happen inside of us that we don't know, we don't understand, that operates us on a daily basis. And unless we can root those out, those sins and those evils, and bring them to the forefront and kill them, they will dominate our lives. So, of course, I'm sure you've read that tweet by now. But again, I'm a victim of 7 years of domestic abuse from a borderline histrionic. I lived with PTSD for the last 15 years. It's actually been longer than that, because the incident that really created that, I was 24 years old. So I'm 41 now. But yeah. And then, of course, the incidents continued to drive forward. Looking back and understanding, I started realizing how early my ex started gaslighting me. I didn't even realize it until much later. My daughter also suffers. I've talked about it many times. She doesn't want to talk to her mother. I encourage her to try to talk to her mother, but she doesn't wish to because of her abusive behavior. Um, in any case, I watched this trial. It brought back many of those dark days. It's a great victory for all abused men. And it really is. But I kind of went on here and I put up Amber's response, which was a bunch of nonsense. It says, Amber, as a gaslighter, would make this about free speech to lie. Right? It's what the Ministry of Truth was all about, right? The mistress of misinformation. They want to make free speech about their lies and their propaganda, right? Their nonsense. She believes Johnny left because Johnny left. This is a characteristic trait of borderline personality disorder, of wanting to not be abandoned, but then creating every circumstance possible to be abandoned. I abandoned my ex-wife. It's not something I'm proud of. It actually it haunts me. It's one of my biggest regrets. I had to leave her for the sake of my daughter. I had to, because I wasn't being a good father, and that's more important to me. But it's nothing I was happy about to do, and I'm not happy about it now. But again, here, getting back to the Amber case, she believes because Johnny left, she has a right to destroy him. I know, because after my ex destroyed me, I left, and she did everything to turn my family against me. And she'd already done that. She'd already isolated me from my family. She'd already lied about numerous things that never happened, labeled me an abuser, and all kinds of other stuff that never happened. I was stalked and had to get a protective order. That's true. There's a court record of that. I literally ran into people who knew us as a couple and asked me if she still was stalking me. I eventually was able to get full custody of my daughter. Unfortunately, the damage done still affects some in my family, as they fail to understand the realities of abuse and abuser relationships. And I have strained family relationships because of this, because they see me in a light where I'm a man and I could not possibly have been abused by this woman. Well, I was. And it has, my family knows. Like, they thought I was suffering PTSD from the war. Like, no, that didn't affect me at all. I didn't do anything to have that affect me. I mean, granted, I was there. Granted, there was stuff, but no. I'm more fortunate than other men who have been lied about. This is an actual systemic issue based in an out of balance gender dynamic. That's what's going on here. Our gender dynamics are out of balance. We have a society that is in an identity crisis, and it's a society that is falling apart. A synthetic society that encourages gynocentric narcissism. Women, women, women. And if you're a Black woman, you are the pinnacle of that. These people are extremely dangerous, and our society covering them and their evils is more so. Most of these types have long histories of evil and broken friendships. I can tell you my ex-wife had told me things that I didn't really grasp or understand. I thought that she had changed. And then I remember the first time I talked to her mother on the phone, who she quit talking to for a few years, her mother also being at least a histrionic, if not borderline herself. The first time I ever talked to her, she went on an hour about everything that her daughter ever did wrong. That was my first conversation with my mother-in-law. That's not a conversation that you generally would have with a mentally healthy person about their child. Um, and you know, I my I think when I met my ex-wife, she wasn't talking to her mother, and I kind of encouraged her to because I thought that was horrible. But I mean, there were reasons not to talk to your parents. Don't get me wrong, but she didn't quite lay them out. But, she had abused her brothers. She had abused all kinds of people in her past. There is stuff there. You could see it in their relationships and how they're rocky. And it gets hard because some people, like myself, who was a victim, had a bunch of rocky relationships afterward and also continued that abuse cycle because I didn't know what was going on with myself. Right. So then you start dating narcissists and other histrionics and other women with borderline, and you don't even know it. And it was God that saved me from all that. The bottom line, it was absolutely God. And I'm going to try and not get upset on the stream because when I talk about this stuff, it does come out and it comes up, and maybe you can hear that in my voice. Um, but I'm not going to try. I'm going to try and restrain my emotions. But this stuff is horrible. And this is why we cannot, as a society, hide our sins either. This is why we have to talk about them. This is why we can't gaslight our way out of this and make it better. And those who are trying to do that are literally trying to destroy the very thing that we want to uphold, the society that we live in. Here I have it. In Amber's case, there are accusations that she may have been responsible for a teen's death. The record was sealed as was a minor. Taking a fine comb through her life will continue to happen. And that is by the internet sleuths. People will find out. People don't like this behavior. When people with borderline, or not just borderline, cluster B personality disorders are discovered, guess what? They move on. Amber Heard has a long line of broken friendships and relationships, a very common pattern. So she will continue to be exposed because she doesn't have enough sense to get help and shut up. She has to keep fighting it because it's an issue of pride for her. And with borderline often comes narcissism. It's not always overt narcissism, though. Often it's covert narcissism, meaning that it's always me, feel pity for me, feel bad for me. It's also a sign of histrionics, that is, especially infantile histrionics, which is a subcategory of histrionics. And guys, I'm no expert in any of this stuff, but I've spent a lot of my life trying to study and read and understand these things because one, I actually had to understand working in a jail and stuff like that. And had a lot of mental health training over the years. But aside from that, it's personal. And I'm a guy who likes to know why things work, and I like to know why I work, and I like to know why I am not the person that I want to be sometimes. And sometimes it's because of things like trauma not dealt with. Anyways, I said she will continue to be exposed. She doesn't have enough sense to get help and shut up. I repeat, these people are very dangerous. Unfortunately, the synthetic society deals in pathologizing, and I misspelled that, but oh well, it's a freaking tweet. And the masses to continue the degeneracy while the righteous suffer. And then I put another thread up. I'm going to read real quick. I got to figure out this new tab share situation. Uh, in any case, Plato's Cave, his Republic, Hegelianism, propaganda, newspeak, doublethink, soma, hyper reality. They live, you sleep, and drift through the synthetic society, oblivious to your programming. For 7 weeks, you watched a wicked person lie poorly in trial, and now the media gaslights you. And here we have those who are able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses. Why? Because whammons, that's why. Or so they say, but in the real, it is all about shifting the balance of power away from liberty and a reestablishment of a feudal technocracy. What you say? How is this related to neo feudal technocratic Great Reset communist revolution? Well, let me tell you, my friends, let me walk you through this. Social engineering. It's grooming when it's children being manipulated. Whammons can do no wrong and must always be believed, no matter how poor their testimony or evidence is. Why? Well, strong, mentally stable, moral men will protect the weak, poor, and infirmed and innocent, meaning that we have to prop up the whammons so we can uh, degrade the men. Men of moral character need an external hedge to be bound. We call this faith in relationship with God in Christ. Carl Jung wrote The Undiscovered Self to address these issues and to hope that men would not reenact the atrocities of the 20th century. His take, again, I'm misspelling here, but his take, God is the answer. And you should go read The Undiscovered Self. It's only about 100 pages. It's a little tiny pamphlet. It's a very easy to read language, much different from much of Jung's writings, because he wanted it consumed to the for the masses, because he wanted to not see more atrocities in which we saw in the 20th century, the mass murders, things like, of course, the Holocaust is the only one that anyone's allowed to talk about, but all the commie stuff like the Holodomor or the Great Famine in China, you know, the all the great revolutions that happened, and the hundreds of millions of people that were slaughtered or starved to death during. As they attack Christians, self determination, personal responsibility, ethics, morals, the basis of objective scientific reality via who or what is a man or woman, they destroy the structures of God in order to be replaced with the despotism of man. Read the New Left's works. They tell you they are creating a world so terrible that those in it will beg for revolution and a new morality will set in. Are you seeing that new morality, or are you still sleeping? And are you guys getting it? I think most of you are. You wouldn't be here. You would not be here otherwise. You are seeing how fake our society is. You are seeing how it's manufactured. You are seeing how they gaslight you in real time. Well, I'm going to show you a couple videos. We're going to talk about some things, of course, that are seemingly unrelated. But um, what I want to bring up here is a an article from PJ Media. I guess I'll just do the windows. Hold on. I'll do the whole screen share. It'd be quicker for flow. So here from PJ Media, we have fake news corrections prove that big media reporters didn't watch Johnny Depp trial. Right, right. It's not their job to watch the trial. It's their job to manufacture what you believe. Mika Brzezinski, she said it herself. In fact, that clip's been going around. And again, and I love it. I love the fact that it has, because people are waking up. Hey, Yiz, I don't know if you're still here, but thanks for stopping by. I know you've been busy. I hope you're feeling better. Um, Let me bigly this. Proving that corporate media is lazy and stupid, a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter at the Los Angeles Times, Richard Winton, reported a Jason Momoa joke meme as real news. At one point, actor Jason Momoa, star of Aquaman, testified uh, via live video in support of his co-star Amber Heard. He wrote, without prompting, he said, "Hi, Camille," to Depp's high-profile litigator, Camille Vasquez, a rising star in Orange County legal circles, who quickly became the star of the trial as much as Depp and Heard. And rightfully so. Like, that woman kicked butt. She was awesome. And was lovely and had a lovely demeanor. Even though she had to be tough, it's hard to balance those two things, right? And then, of course, we have from Megan Fox, not the actress, but the writer for PJ Media. I will laugh about this for the rest of my life. Great work. It says, even witnesses seem to be influenced by the media coverage. At one point, actor Jason Momoa, star of Aquaman, testified. Yeah. The problem is that Momoa did not testify at the trial. Winton would have known this if he actually watched the proceeding, which a reporter reporting on it should do. Instead, Winton got his news about the trial from TikTok and social media, where his meme was making the rounds. Obviously, this is not real. It is dub video. This is the definition of fake news. Yeah, and there were numerous ones of these. There were all kinds of like fake interviews that were out there. There was all kinds of stuff. This was a big, giant wave of media exposure for all kinds of people. Channels were made because of this event. And for me, just on a personal note, this was very cathartic. It was cleansing. It allowed me to see that. It allowed me to understand myself and certain behaviors. Listening to Dr. Curry, Dr. Mommy, rather, Dr. Muffins, and stuff that I know already, but I don't think about because I tend to internalize blame a lot and make it my own fault, right? Which is actually the responsible thing to do, but that's not always the case. Sometimes other people do have fault in things that you do, right? Because you cause other people, when you put them in certain situations, if they do not have a certain amount of self-control, or if they've been gaslit for a long time, if they've been brainwashed, if they've been pretty much psychologically, spiritually destroyed, then you can cause pretty bad reactions with people. You can manipulate and control them. This is why oftentimes people who are parts of cults and do horrible things are not found to be fully complicit with the cult leader. It's something we understand about human nature. And it's something God understands too. Something God understands too. You know, you're not supposed to forsake the assembly, and you're not supposed to cause your brother to sin or to sin against you. The Times had an embarrassing correction, which is still visible on the article, and says an earlier version of this article included a paragraph about Jason Momoa testifying by the video at the trial. Well, how about the headline? What was it from the Guardian, that this was just as bad as the Holocaust for women? And they changed that one, of course, because it's an absurd statement. So if you want accuracy, don't look to the dinosaur press, lawyers who attended the trial in the gallery to report on the jury reaction, like the DUI guy and Ian Runkle reported that they hardly even saw any mainstream news in the courtroom. Yet big media wanted to be the ones guiding the narrative of the trial because big media isn't real. Big media is a big brainwashing scam. Big media is meant to gaslight you. Big media is meant to propagate ideas and narratives. And it's not that propaganda is inherently negative, but if you are using propaganda to manipulate, it is inherently negative. It is not the truth. Let's see, I lost my place there. Left up to them, they would have us believe that Heard is the victim and Depp is the abuser. Anyone who actually watched the trial came to the opposite conclusion. Exactly. You cannot possibly see her side of the story. It was obviously contrived. She's a terrible, terrible liar. I'm no body language expert, but there are a lot out there who are, who could just break down every time she's being deceptive. But I can tell you, I'm pretty good intuitively with people, and I do know some of the cues of deception, and some of them I want to show you. One of them I actually meant to get, and I just recalled I didn't get up here, but is her writing on paper. Now, actually, I don't really need to bring up the clip. You can find it. Just type in YouTube or anywhere Amber Heard taking notes. She's not taking notes, folks. She's moving her pen, pretending she's taking notes. That is actually not only on its face value being deceptive, but it's actually a means in which she is trying to incur deception, because what it does is while she has to focus on pretending like she's actually writing things down, she is then muting the rest of her bodily reactions to what is being said in the courtroom. And you can tell when something is said about you or somebody else, you all have experienced this, and you know it's truthful and you don't want people to find out about it, you have a little shift in your body. Might not be that big. It might not be very big. You might just have a little shift, but it's going to be something like you're gonna, you know, jerk a little bit or something. I don't know exactly. But you can catch these things. Of course, she does a lot of the believe me stuff, looking out the top of her eyes. I'm looking down at my computer, so you know she does like this thing a lot. The neck extension, shoulders come up, those kind of things. She's got pursed lips a lot, where she's holding back words. Of course, there is the example from the deposition where she literally covers her mouth because she knows, oh, I said words. What am I supposed to say? In the deposition, she's chewing on food. Again, this is to mitigate her body language and behavior. This is a purposeful, deceptive tactic. So, again, go watch the body language experts over and over. But the pencil writing, I haven't seen really anybody talk about what that is. That's exactly what that is. If you look up techniques on how to beat a lie detector, it's things like that. Of course, the best way to beat a lie detector is just to believe what you're saying and understand that the lie detector isn't real. It's all a parlor trick. But yeah, there are times where she smirked when she shouldn't have. There were all kinds of things. But obviously, again, the media did not watch the trial. Yeah, big media wanted to be the ones guiding the narrative of the trial. Left up to them, they would have us believe that Heard is the victim and Depp is the abuser. Anyone who actually watched the trial would conclude the opposite. PJ Media reached out to to Witten to ask him how much of the trial he actually watched before he reported on it, but at the time of publishing, he did not respond. Witten isn't the only mainstream blue check journal just making stuff up about the trial. Taylor Renz, the infamous Washington Post reporter who doxed libs of TikTok and a dozen other people, because Taylor Renz she's an evil person, folks, and God will judge her for that. I can promise. Her fame and wealth that she has, that is the rewards in this life, and she will not go on to glory. I can tell you that, not unless she repents. Anyways, for no reason, and called it journalism. Doxed the libs of TikTok for no reason and called it journalism. Also reported false facts in her recent article trying to make YouTubers reporting on the trial look bad. Lorenz claimed she had reached out to the YouTubers in question, but they both made statements that she had not. Legal bites. This is to say, I didn't respond to requests to comment. I know I've gotten a lot of emails over the past 2 months, but I've just double checked for your name, Taylor Renz, and I see no email from you. And then here, Lorenz says, I wrote about the Depp trial, offered a glimpse into our future media ecosystem where content creators serve as the personalities breaking news to the increasing numbers of viewers and da. Yeah. Yeah. Because people want realness. They want honesty because they're waking up from the synthetic society. They're starting to see how they're being manipulated on a daily basis by all forms of mass media and government. She also reported falsely a quote, allegedly from attorney Adam Waldman. A previous version of the story inaccurately attributed to Adam Waldman a quote describing how he contacted some internet influencers. That quote has been removed. The story has also been amended to note the post attempts to reach whatever that name is. I'm not going to try and read, and that umbrella guy for comment. And Tug has been a champ in this. There's Colonel Quartz as well. There's a lot of people who've been doing this stuff for a while. I'm going to show you a video later. We're not going to play it, but I'm going to show you a video you should watch that's a bit older from 2020 that breaks this whole thing down. You can clearly tell who the abuser was. Clearly. Lorenz's subheading on the original article read, "Influencers discover there's money and clout to be made in covering breaking news." Everyone knew that. Now, I don't approach my streams that way, but I'm a little different. I'm a little different. I'm not, I would like this to be great if it was a full-time job. It'd be awesome, but I'm more concerned with just telling the truth. I just want to say what I want to say. I guess it's okay when Washington Post reporters do it, but it's not okay for independent press. When we do it, it's for money and clout. Okay, Taylor. And for the record, PJ Media reached out to Lorenz to ask for a comment, but she did not respond. She wrote, "The trial offered a potential glimpse into the future of media where content creators serve as personality breaking news to an increasing number of viewers, and in turn, define the online narrative around major events." Well, yeah, Taylor, no one trusts you. That is clear in the polling. Nobody at all trusts the mainstream media. You know what? I've never met Nick Rekieta. I trust that guy. And maybe one day I'll sit down and have a conversation with him. But the reason why I watch him, or why I would watch Legal Bites, no, I'm a little iffy on her right now because of drama, but we'll see. I don't know the whole story, so, but whatever. But still, I trust these people because they are being real. They're talking like real people. They're showing their real character, and they are obviously, they obviously have expert subject matter opinions on being a lawyer, as they are lawyers. Man, I'm not even going to get into Heard's lawyer going on TV and basically externalizing her blame in the case and trying to say that there was more evidence and whatever else. There wasn't. There was nothing that got excluded. The UK trial was a farce trial. It was a judge trial. It was not a jury trial. It's a reason why we have jury trials here in America, because judges are and tend to be and often get corrupt. It's hard to take a random sample of people and them all be corrupted unless they live in DC, like the Sussman trial. Why shouldn't independent creators profit off breaking news to people in a fun and creative way? Well, because they're the little people and they can't have the same kind of authority and power as the gatekeepers who are creating the synthetic society. They perpetuate it, right? They couldn't possibly be more inaccurate than Taylor Lorenz, who misquotes people, or Richard Winton, who reports memes as facts. In fact, YouTube content creator Lorenz went after both have been reported accurately on the trial. That umbrella guy was even mentioned in the trial for breaking stories on the case. Yeah, because Elaine Bredehoff, her Amber's lawyer, had to keep interjecting him. They obviously really hate Tug. And Tug is, of course, anonymous. But I trust that guy in his reporting. Legal Bites, Alita. Okay, that's what that was. Why I couldn't read that earlier. Is a lawyer, has been reported on the trial without having to apologize for reporting false things, unlike the Washington Post and LA Times. Neither has Tug, for that matter. Both creators have reported accurately on the trial, unlike big media. And that's why they get the audience they get and the people support them monetarily. And of course, this goes on to some degree. You guys can check it out for yourself. But, it's pretty clear why these things happen. It's pretty clear why people like content creators who are independent. You're not going to get somebody in the mainstream media who wants to talk about these things and tell you, oh yeah, and by the way, this kind of stuff personally affects me. Like, this is something I have lived with for a very long time. The man that I once was was absolutely killed by my ex-wife. That is a horrible thing to 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 get your head around, but it's 100% true. I can never go back to who I was. I will always be who I am now. And I don't know that I deserve that, but it is the cards that God has laid out before me, and in that, you know, I thank him, and it helps shape me as the man that I am today, and the things that I believe and can see in my passions for the truth and what is just and what is right, and understanding that building strong men starts with children, and repairing strong men starts with strong children, because weak men don't recover. Weak children don't recover, and they become perpetuators of this. So guys, just some videos that you should probably check out if you haven't seen. They're probably all over. I just picked some random ones. Top 10 movie quotes Amber Heard stole from her testimony. This was pretty clear for most people that was going on. The Secret Life of Amber Heard. This is Nice Boy Things, and this actually was a guy who was in a relationship with Amber during the filming of something in, like, I think 2003, and he talks about how crazy she was. He talks about how beautiful and attractive she seemed. That's a common borderline trait. They're very seductive. And he talks about how she had a very, very, very bad coke habit. This one I actually want to play for you because it's 4 minutes long, but I took the clip of it so the audio would be good. I believe that's this right here. We're going to go ahead and
weren't looking bad enough for Amber. As if things already weren't looking bad enough for Amber Heard, she's now also getting exposed for allegedly being involved in a car accident that killed her best friend. In the light of Amber's recent court testimony, social media users have been busy digging up Amber's problematic past. We already know that Amber was once arrested for laying hands on her ex-girlfriend, Tazia Von Ree, but it now turns out that she may have also been involved in a fatal car crash. An old mugshot of Amber recently resurfaced online, with the processing date of September 12, 2003, and the location of Austin, Texas, Amber's hometown. The document also states that Amber was arrested for driving with a suspended license. One Reddit user then shared the mugshot in a thread titled, "Was Amber Heard involved in vehicular manslaughter as a teenager?" In the meantime, Yahoo News published an article documenting Amber's background and revealing that at the age of 16, Amber lost her best friend to a car accident.
Shelly, I know some people aren't waking up. It's because they refuse to, but it's mostly boomers. And I know you're older, but I think maybe you are a boomer, maybe you're a late boomer, as we call it. But I think you're a Gen Xer, right? You're like one of the early Gen Xers. So the Gen X generation was kind of forgotten. It went straight from boomers to like the millennials and zennial thing, right? And it's because we're in this weird period where society was really stable, actually. Like for the Gen Xers in the 60s, maybe less so in the early 70s, but then society kind of got really stable in the 80s and 90s for a while, right? And so people were making money, moving up the middle class, and whatever else. Boomers believe it is them that, and the silent generation that sold us out. It is them that decided that, oh no, we are going to trust the institutions, and we are going to implement socialism in our own ways, our own fascism. And so, um, you could say the greatest generation did as well. I don't know, but um, those folks have certain beliefs. Like I remember I used to shoot pool with a guy who was older, nearly 80, and old Jack, very nice guy. And I actually was friends with his daughter and stuff as well. But um, he believed that FDR was like the savior of the Great Depression because he grew up during the Great Depression. And if it wasn't for FDR, they would have starved to death. And it's like, Jack, that's a false belief. If it wasn't for FDR, you wouldn't have been in a depression that was so great. But good luck trying to convince somebody that has a religious belief about a position in their or a time period in their life and an establishment. And really what all this comes down to, and it's the number one thing I hate the most, is idolatry. It's idolatry of these people. Hollywood are our gods, right? The media are our gods. The people in government are our gods. Yeah, that's what I thought you were Gen X. Yeah. All right, let's get back to this video.
And that this experience led Amber to become an atheist. Reddit user Cold Kate made the connection between this event and Amber's leaked mugshot and commented, "I had read that she dropped out of high school and moved to California with only $180. It would make sense why she dropped out of school and left for California at that time if she was responsible for the death of her high school classmate. I could see how she could be hated by her classmates and want to leave. I hope those classmates speak out." Another Reddit user responded, "Yes, I have heard that too. She had her license suspended."
So let's talk about this real quick. This is Reddit. I could care less what people are saying on Reddit. Most people who are on Reddit, at least on any sort of left-wing Reddit, are absolute idiots. But let's hold up. People can say anything on the internet. Just because someone says they heard this or that, this isn't proof. But there is speculation here because we know that there was something in her past, and the records are sealed in Texas.
For a few years and was arrested for driving without a license. She had also been arrested for drunk driving. I think the move was definitely inspired by her wanting to run away from her past. Many fans on Twitter also claimed that they have inside knowledge about this incident, and one Twitter user said, "Amber Heard was in a drunk driving accident in high school where the other girl died, and she demanded bodyguards at the funeral, even though it's never been proven who was driving the car." And though this person didn't know the alleged victim's name, they claimed that the crash got Amber's license revoked, which she subsequently was ticketed for driving on back in 2003, and that her attorney at the time exclusively handled DUI-related cases. Another Twitter user shared police records of Amber's arrest and wrote, "Breaking news! Amber Heard, a minor driving, got into a car accident that killed her best friend. Her arrest records were sealed. License suspended for 5 years. Then Amber Heard was arrested again in 2003 for driving under a suspended license. You see?"
All right, so I actually don't need to play this whole video for the sake of time, but actually, I just closed that. Let me see. Let me find it real quick for you so I can show you where you can watch the whole thing. Oh, here it is. So, and it's only like a 4-minute long video, almost 5 minutes, but it is telling. Just like I said, these people always have. It's from Pop Juice is the channel. Okay, breaking Amber Heard's past leaked, and it's got a knife there and illed her friend, right? Like I said, these people, they have a history. There is always a trail going back. Johnny Depp has no history. And frankly, I don't care that the guy's a drunk and a drug user. I don't. It does not affect me one way or another. That's on him. That affects him, his soul and his life, and I can't do anything about that. You know, I can't do anything about you and your soul and your life. I can only speak to it and hope that you may find my words wise, that you may take them into consideration. So, another video, again, I'm not going to play this, but I think you guys should really check this out. Way back from May 2020, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, the truth and timeline of the case. This is stuff this is the depositions, this is extended video clips and whatever else. And that's Jador Depp is the channel. Literally, you can hear it. You can hear the abuse going on through Amber. You can hear the gaslighting. You can hear the taunting. You can hear the emasculation, right? When I left my ex-wife, I was always, I didn't date a lot or anything when I was young, but I was always good with women, pretty decent, right? I always had a lot of female friends, whatever else. I had no confidence. I was 29 years old. I had no confidence. Didn't think anyone would want me. I thought, who's going to want to date a loser who's getting divorced and has a child? I had no idea that I actually was marketable in this world. I had a lot of confidence problems. I had, in fact, fallen in with a narcissist because of that. But I never had that issue when I was younger. And again, that speaks to that trauma and how it changed me. So I give a cautionary tale of those who get involved in relationships. And I've explained this. My daughter, of course, she knows her mom, but my daughter and I have talked about it numerous times since she's been, old enough to get pregnant, basically. And you don't know, man, the damage that you can incur to yourself. And maybe you'll get out of it sooner. Maybe you're better than me. Or maybe you'll just get locked in there and be in an impossible situation. A lot of people called back to the movie Gone Girl over this. And if you haven't seen that, I mean, that's a crazy lady running things there. They exist in that movie. Basically, this woman sets up her husband because she gets mad at him because, well, they're in a loveless marriage. And he wants to leave her, but he doesn't feel like he can. And she gets mad at him. And so makes it look like she was murdered. And people do this. People will do this kind of stuff. And lastly, as far as what I want to address with these things, well, I did want to bring this up. This was interesting. Top secret Johnny Depp jury trial notes on jurors' reactions to Amber Heard. $13,000 is the current bid. There are videos out there of a juror answering questions through TikTok. Supposedly, he was a juror. So there are things out there if you're interested in that. But what I really wanted to bring you to was the respondent. So Tug had the respondent on, and I wasn't aware of his channel, actually. I don't believe. But he had this really, really great woman on who was, I can't remember her name now. Jennifer Harmon, Dr. Jennifer Harmon. So Colorado State University, Dr. Jennifer Harmon. And she does research on family violence and how it affects the children and the men, not just the women. Because see, she's not part of the synthetic society. She's a seeker of truth, of reality, of what is real. And most who are part of the synthetic society, who aren't awake, who go along with it, they don't care what the truth is. But they do. They do care to reap the benefits of that society. In any case, that is The new era of Men Too dialogue, not a Me Too monologue, and it's really good. And there's just there's a lot of stuff here that is good as far as waking people up that men are not always abusers, and men are not all evil, and women aren't all perfect and lovely. Well, most of us who live in the real already know and understand that. And yet, all of the money and all of the media and all of the research and all of the government's talking points are always about protecting women, even to the point where they're allowed to murder their children. You want to tell me that the synthetic society does not create abusive people? They're not churning out abusive people when they literally celebrate the murder of innocent children. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you if you can't see that. All right, so that's going to get me to shift gears here, guys, a little bit. Um, let's let's do this real quick. Let's talk about the Daily Wire's "What Is a Woman" video. I'm sure you've heard plenty about it. I haven't seen it yet, but this is exactly what I'm talking about as far as these synthetic people in the synthetic society. So let's look at this real quick, and then I'm going to kind of shift into something seemingly unrelated, but it is more related than you realize.
Gametes. That's what makes me male.
No, your sperm don't make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality, in truth, okay?
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
If I see a chicken laying eggs and I say that's a female chicken laying eggs, did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Does a chicken have gender identity? Does a chicken cry?
Well,
Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's
What does that have to do
frame
with-
it because you're trying
A chicken has sex like any
a
biological
chicken has
organism.
an assigned gender, but a chicken doesn't have a gender identity.
So we assign female to chickens when they lay eggs?
We assume they're female if they lay eggs.
Yeah, this is just sophistry in action. Spook, you don't support this type of digging up history? I do. I do. You should own every sin you've ever done. Somebody should know, and somebody should be forgiving of that too. And I don't mean just God. I mean, you need to be able to confess your sins to be free of them. It's the hiding of sins that is the problem. As far as abortion, are there any cases where you support abortion? No. No, you don't kill children. The point of abortion is to stop the birth. They're literally now talking about removing the child, birthing it, and then killing it. It's insane. And it's the worship of Molech and Baal and whatever else. They used to sacrifice their children, the Canaanites, to these false gods. So with that, with the Daily Wire, what you just heard there was, of course, a woman being a sophist and trying to circumvent the conversation. I found this clip kind of interesting from Tim Pool the other day. So I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing, but I clipped about 7 minutes of Tim's show the other day on his Timcast daily segments. And he was talking about the Daily Wire's video here. And the reason why I clipped this is because he says some important things that I want to give context to. And I want you to understand of how this synthetic society does what it does, how it functions, how it creates this abusive nature and this false reality in which people are so confused. It's actually a synthetic reality in the idea that it is a synthesis of ideas. that don't make any sense. They don't have any weight or meaning behind them. They're just slogans.
Strzok told us he's the walk.
So for context, Brandon Straka started the walk away movement. He is a gay man that became a Trump supporter. Tim is giving the reason why Straka became a Trump supporter. And so, again, he's relaying this.
Brandon Strzok told us, he's the walk away guy, that when he first watched that video that debunked his worldview, it was painful. He said, Donald Trump mocked this disabled guy. And then someone said, no, he didn't. Here's the video. And he's like, I'm not watching that. And then he thought, you know what? I'm going to watch it and prove her wrong. And he watched it, and it was like pain in his brain.
That, my friends, despite what everyone says or thinks or believes what cognitive dissonance is, that painful reaction in the brain that Brandon Straka is talking about, or Tim is talking about, that Brandon had, is cognitive dissonance. It is not having two ideas at the same time in your head. No. It is the mental, physical, and emotional distress that it creates when one idea competes with another idea and beats it out. And Brandon Straka was identifying with the Democrats, and the Democrats being the proper, righteous, and just people. And when he saw that they lied and that what he was being told was all fake and not at all part of the real, then he had that painful reaction. And, not to be an internet autist, but we all are, right? That it really drives me nuts that people use cognitive dissonance in the wrong way. It's become such a catch-all term, and no one's correctly using it. I've even heard psychologists use it wrong, including Jordan Peterson. You can go look this up. It is the actual pain. That is cognitive dissonance.
I've never had that, but I can understand people who have. And I've never had that because I think from a young age, my parents taught me to distrust. So I've just always been like, I don't believe you, whatever. One of the
Spook, there is no case where you have to kill a baby in order to save a mother's life. That's just an outright lie.
These days, there's going to be like a story where it's like the media was right the whole time, and I'm going to go, no, because I just believed it was full of lies. This documentary is fantastic. I said it a million times. But the issue here is the cyber attack happened because they are losing. Let me show you this from 2X chromosomes. 2X chromosomes with 13.4 million members with their big old Pride Month flag up top. A study has found that a majority of Democrat men under 50 and a supermajority of Republican men under 50 agree with the statement, quote, feminism has done more harm than good. Whoa! What? Democrat men are saying that? Keep in mind, as we see Roe falling, femicide increasing, and birth control coming under attack, too little mainstream fanfare. I couldn't believe this when I saw it. But whether it's true or not, this is exactly why they are sending the full weight of cyber attacks against the Daily Wire. Because the Daily Wire is part of the reason. The other day I covered the story from Fast Company that said something like why you must beware of right-wing comedy. From Joe Rogan to the Babylon Bee to the Daily Wire. Joe Rogan, right-wing comedy?
Yep, Joe Rogan is right-wing, Tim. You all have to understand this. This is part of the synthetic society. Joe Rogan is right-wing because he is not in line with their orthodoxy. Now, I know the goals are constantly shifting and constantly changing, right? I read to you the other week a little bit from 1984 and how Winston was being instructed or told what the true goals of the party were. Anyone, as our friend Don is fond of saying, anyone left of Mao is right wing. That is part of their religious belief. If you are not part of the coming utopia, you're on the wrong side of history and you are right wing. This is why they constantly attack and abandon themselves. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You can keep the baby, but even before that, man, even before that, I guarantee you. But this is the problem we with the synthetic world, dude. We don't birth children naturally. I was at a Memorial Day party, okay? And people at that Memorial Day party had a baby, not just my wife and I. And they were talking about how there's got to be a better way in 2022 to be able to feed our child. And my wife was like breastfeeding? And they did stuff with their baby that was weird, you know? Like she was crying, and instead of feeding her, they kind of took her away and tried to calm her down and do whatever else. But most likely, and I think she's only a couple months old, I forget, she's pretty little yet, right? Most likely, she needed to eat. But they won't breastfeed, they'll pump. I guess that's beneath them. But this is the same individual who also told me, or didn't tell me directly, but was around one time and said something about how he gets his hair cut at this black barber shop, and how it's so cool that he's the only white guy in the black barber shop. And I'm just like, you realize that you're not doing anything special, bud. I'm getting my hair cut in black barber shops for a long time. Not now, obviously, but when I was in the Marines, you know, and it's not like it's some progressive thing. It's like, so what? Like, you're not going to go into a black barber shop and they're like, no whites allowed. And it doesn't mean anything, but to him, it proved that he was cool with black people. Completely fake. I despise this crap. I despise it utterly. Anyways.
Yo, the woke cult is losing and they know it. This is crazy. I'm going to show you this poll, but it's got some caveats. The point here is when these woke people see this and they're like, young men think feminism is bad, two things happen. They recoil in anger and rage because the pain I just explained. Brandon
Hey,
Strachey
Strippy's
felt
back.
pain. Well, these people are like, no, I've dedicated my life to these ideas.
Strippy, you're my favorite troll. And I have no idea. Do I support Chelsea, Bowden, and San Francisco? I don't know who that is. I don't care about your crazy beliefs. You are part of this synthetic society. You don't live in the real. And I mean, if you're trolling and you're having fun, go for it, man. But otherwise, your opinions mean nothing to me. I'm not going to ban you because I think it's funny.
Yes. I have a friend who told me that his dad was a physicist. And there was this big thing happening with like string theory and M theory a while back. I'm not a physicist. I don't know. But the general idea was that there are physicists who have dedicated their lives to a theory. Maybe it's, string theory or M theory or whatever. M theory, I think, is the latest version. I don't keep up on physics. And what happens is when a new when an up-and-coming young star approaches and says, I have a new theory that's better than yours, they reject it outright because if their theory is wrong, 20, 30 years of their lives down the toilet, they chased after this and to a dead end, they can't accept it. So the old guard often will reject new ideas, saying, I will not accept that 30 years of my life were for nothing. That's what they're seeing right now. When young men, both Democrat and Republican, are rejecting this, they say no. And they get angry and say, I will destroy you before I accept that I was wrong. That's what they say. So they'll...
Spook, Strippy is over on Entropy. You should go Muslim him right now.
DOS the Daily Wire, because Matt Walsh made a documentary where he asks simple questions. What's a woman? And you know what the experts say? Exactly. They basically say a woman is someone who identifies as a woman. What? And then I love it because you've seen the Dr. Phil thing. He's like, what is that? A woman. What is a woman? A person identifies as a woman. What are you saying? Bro, Matt, I know exactly.
because words have meaning. If you're going to use a word, you have to understand its meaning. And when you're saying anyone can be a woman, then it has no meaning. There cannot be a ubiquitous meaning to any word. This is something that is that was used, or sorry, was questioned by the postmodernists, and it is now used by the left to create psychopathologies, as Paulo Freire would put it, right?
Where you're at. We had a progressive on the show on IRL, and he was like, conservatives are just saying trans people don't exist. And I said, what do you mean trans people don't exist? They're saying trans people don't exist. I'm like, Ben Shapiro talks with Blair White. He knows she's trans and that she exists. What do you mean? They don't mean anything. There's no ideas behind what they're saying. So this is what we see. Now, these people are rightly upset about this, but there's a caveat. Let me first show you, this is the wrong one. Let me show you this right here. This is the SPLC. Now it's all coming into focus. Perhaps the story isn't completely true. No, I do think that feminism and wokeness are losing. But this is the origin of the comment made from June 1st. This is just from the other day. SPLC poll finds substantial support for great replacement theory and other hard right ideas. Hard right. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It is a labeling device, a tool to label you as some sort of other. You know, just like transphobe, homophobe, Islamic phobe, you know, all those things. They don't mean anything. And they're literally slogans. And what Tim's about to talk about is how these organizations actually exist to exist and perpetuate their own existence, because that's how they get their paycheck. They are ultimately the grifters.
Hard right ideas. We'll go through it. I'd like to point out the Southern Poverty Law Center needs to tell you the problem exists if they're going to ask you for money. I worked for nonprofits. I fundraised for them, and I've encountered nonprofits that lie overtly for you to give them money. If they came out to you and said, young people are woke, you'd be like, okay, then you don't need money from me. Congratulations, we've won, right? Nonprofits need to make sure the problem persists. Otherwise, they go out of business. You know, a normal business, they're in the business of selling you whatever it is they sell. A dairy farm wants to sell you milk. Well, you're going to need milk until you don't need to eat, and you're always going to need to eat. So that business will last forever, won't it? A nonprofit says, here's a problem we're going to solve. If they solve the problem, they go to business. Can't have that. Let's take a look at some of these polls. What does the SPLC say? The Great Replacement. They say, as you know, the demographic makeup of America is changing and becoming more diverse, with the U.S. Census estimating white people will be a minority in approximately 25 years. Generally speaking, do you find these changes to be very positive, somewhat negative, or very negative? Very positive. Among Democrats, 27%. That is creepy. It is creepy that
Yeah. And it is the same kind of very positive, warm feelings that they have toward, I don't know, murdering black babies. Because the Democrats have never changed. Now, I don't think the Republicans are perfect, and many of the Republicans are just rhinos. They're all globalists. But the Democrats are actually pretty much, they pretty much have been the same since the Civil War, and even before that. Now, Jackson took the party from, or reformed the party, that is President Jackson. But the party was already in existence as the Democratic Republicans from Thomas Jefferson's day. And there were those and the Whigs, right? The Whigs were more of the monarchist type. And there were some other parties and stuff. But what basically happened is by the time of the Civil War, the Democrats were and still are the same party. And they had ultimate power. And the Republicans were trying to get a president in on their one issue. And that was to end slavery. And today, we live in a society that is part of the aftermath of that Civil War. And in fact, we're about to repeat the Civil War. It's not going to be north versus south necessarily, but we're in the midst of fourth and fifth dimensional warfare. Tim likes to point this out all the time. Of course, I talk about it too quite a bit because it's true. It is the reality. And I would like to stave off the part where, millions of people get murdered. I would like that not to happen. I would like not to see children starving. All right? It's kind of a concern to me, especially as a man who just is trying to live in moral excellence, and is deeply hurt by seeing these things happen to people. It's very troubling to me. But just wait, because right now all the gas prices way up there, aren't they? Just wait till wintertime. Wait and see what happens when the supply chain begins to break down. How the small farmers out there right now, and a lot of small farmers don't have small farms, but I'm not talking about the industrialized, subsidized New Deal farmers, because that still exists, folks. Those plans from the 1920s. Multi-millionaire farmers subsidized by the government. Now, I'm talking about the other farmers who are still out there on their own. And of course, the synthetic society has their hands on them. Things like Monsanto and their grain. Go watch, what is that movie? It's not Forks Over Knives. That's a stupid movie about veganism, and screw veganism. That's not our natural diet. But what's the other one called? I can't remember. But it has like Joel Salatin in it and a bunch of other folks. And it talks a little bit about the bureaucracy involved in our agricultural system. But again, this is why you don't want a government this size. This is why you don't want unaccountable people. This is why we don't want to pick winners and losers, because what happens is then other people, the society becomes too dependent on one singular thing. And if it fails, everyone fails with it. But with the farmers who aren't part of that system, they're slowly being destroyed purposefully, because we need to have an industrialized agricultural system. And I've talked to you about the 10 planks of communism plenty of times on here. It is one of them. We already have achieved it. We just haven't achieved it fully. Fortunately, Beyond Burger is in deep business right now. Their profits are down like 80%, I think. And now they're going to hire the most fake person in the world, Kim Kardashian, to represent their fake meat. Anyways, back to Tim and what Tim's talking about here. The idea that you would like European culture and European people to die off is absurd. To justify, like, I don't justify the murder of evil people even. I think all of that should be in the hands of God. That is my faith, though. But I don't want any race per se or ethnicity to be destroyed. But the reality is that you can go look at genetic migration patterns, and we know other historical evidence of migration patterns, in cultural migration patterns. We're all freaking mutts. Just because you are mostly European doesn't mean that you don't have common ancestry with other folks in other parts of the world. People migrate, cultures do change. The important part here is, the key is, in my mind, we have created this wonderful culture of freedom and self-independence and self-governance. And even though it has been broken down over the last 100 years, there is still a spark or a glimmer in which we can still bring back the great ideals that was set forth, that are the pinnacle, literally the pinnacle of our civilization. Because right now we're on the back end of that pinnacle, folks, and we're degrading fast. We're falling apart. We don't know who we are. We have all kinds of psychological conditions. I got a guy who likes to troll and bring up LGBT stuff because his brain is so gone and so fried from the synthetic society that he doesn't have any sort of truth detector. Right? And that's just my little channel. It's little old me. Got people in the past who've written me emails, which I, of course, read on stream because it was so absurd that they thought that an email to me was going to get me to change my belief systems that I've been developing well nigh for 41 years. I don't think so, bud. I think you can take a hike. And my highest value, of course, is the truth. It always has been. I've always said that. And so what these people are actually confronting is the truth. They're running from truth in reality itself. That's what the trans movement's about. Running from truth and reality because your mental state is so fried by this synthetic society. That's why the rates of these children who identify as LGBT are going up in the West. And it's obviously grooming. And that's absolutely evil. You do not groom children. You guide their path and let them choose. You instill morality into them. You instill strength of character. And you lead by example. But we don't have a society that does any of that. I'm going to show you that in a second.
Democrats are like, oh, thank you, less white people. Republicans, 8% say very positive. Also creepy. It is creepy to me that people are going to be like, it's a good thing. Independent voters are at 12%. Somewhat positive. 20% Republicans, 36% Democrats, and 27% independents. I don't believe that. They believe it's positive that white people are going to be a minority. Somewhat negative is 24 for Republicans, 12% for Democrats, and 24% independent. Very negative, 23% Republican, 5% Democrat, 9% independent, and don't know at 25 for Republicans, 19% Democrats, and 20% independents. Anyone who is saying that it's a good thing that white people will be a minority are creepy to me. That being said, the people who are saying it is negative, I also have questions about their ideology. The reality is there's not even an I don't care option because I don't care. I literally don't care. Don't know. I think you needed and neither. It's not positive or negative. It's immaterial as far as I'm concerned. Now, that's just me. I don't think race is or should be a component of how we view government or our country or our values. What matters is the values we hold as a nation and the culture we build.
Yes, that's what matters. The values as a nation, and that is why we're in the midst of a civil war, because we don't have any values as a nation, as a unit, as a cohesive unit. We have one faction which wishes to erode your sovereignty, your personal responsibility, take away all of your rights as a human being, and then make you a debt slave and sell you out as a commodity across the globe. And then we have another party that does the same exact thing, but says, well, slow down there, partner. Going a little too fast. We're going to have to hold that back for another 20 years. That's what we have. And then we have a bunch of people who are synthetic themselves. They have accrued into this synthesis. In fact, I kind of talked about this in a tweet the other day. Let me just pull up my Twitters. Yeah. So I'm no legal expert, but shall not be infringed seems pretty absolute. This is in the idea that the 2A is not absolute. Yeah. Joe Biden, that's a nice Freudian slip. Joe Biden is gaslighting again. Given the synthetic society exists, folks have a hard time with simple truths. For instance, Nazis were left-wing collectivist authoritarians who wanted global socialism. They absolutely did. It's in their writings. Hitler talked about it. But you're brainwashed and you don't know this. And you're going to go, well, no, they weren't. They were capitalists. And you have no proof. You've never read anything about their economics or their planning. So all you're doing is sloganeering and repeating things. You're parroting a false fact, not real. And I say right here, that's a fact of primary sources. And I put this up because Judge Napolitano was talking about Scalia being wrong about 2A having issues, whatever. I said, in Stephen P. Holbrook's The Founder's Second Amendment, you can find a multitude of primary sources and the historical context around 2A. Shays' rebellion was instrumental to its codification. The most important reason, though, was a standing army is the weapon of tyrants. The Americans at that time did not want a standing army. It's the same reason why every year Congress still has to vote to fund the military. With modern debates about police being mostly a product of synthetic design, we hear one loud group who controls the narrative decry "popo" for brutality, but they merely wish to replace them. They decry the popo, that is, for brutality. They merely wish to replace them with their own Stasi and Ministry of Safety. Outside of the ancient practice of a sheriff, which is a pretty old practice, the right of arms was about self-policing. That is, local men of moral character in their communities would uphold peace and security in accordance with the will of that community. Read de Tocqueville for a glimpse at America's true purpose at its founding. Morality was key to this. Why do you think the stripping away of morality is such an important facet of all of this, folks? So the synthetic society has stripped away the morality long ago and now openly pushes degeneracy with pride. It alienates and isolates men and abusers. It alienates and isolates men as abusers due to their victims. It tells them they are valueless, horrible monsters, and the cause of an evil, especially whitey. The cause of all evil, especially whitey, white men especially. Right? Why is that? Isn't that racist? No, it's not racist, Bill, because you have to understand that racism's only privilege and power. Okay. Okay, sophist. You can get out of my face. Like that's not an argument, dude. Redefining something. No. The idea that you would decide that I have characteristics based on an arbitrary feature, such as the melanin in my skin or the type of hair that I have or facial structure. That's pretty absurd to me. I'm a lot more than those things. Way, way more than those things. The reality here is the synthetic society has worked to destroy men's agency, and with the obliteration of the family to be replaced with a Gnostic state, creating generations of hedonistic narcissists and sociopaths who can only feel and act impulsively in perpetual infantilization. No self-restraint, no control. Kind of reminds me of the lady screaming about Trump winning. Or all the ladies I talked to on Facebook, some of which I dated, who were flipping out, thanks, you conservative Christians. Thanks for what? Making your life better? Trump made your life better. He's not a god. I'm not going to worship him as one. He's certainly imperfect. He's not my candidate. I preferred Rand Paul. I didn't vote for the guy the first time, but I sure as hell wasn't going to vote for Biden the second and let that up to chance. But man, did things get better for the first time in 16 years. Literally, since Clinton. The true goal of this synthesis is the absolute control over the weak-minded masses. No adults should be so broken as to want the state to do what is your own birthright, to defend yourself. That is to live. And in that life pursuit, not material, but excellence of character and reputation. That's why the pursuit of happiness is in there instead of the pursuit of property. By the way, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because I thought that perhaps saying the pursuit of property was a little inappropriate. And also there was the slavery issue, which Jefferson does address in the Declaration. It just was removed because of 2 states. But that would also require a moral society, and the synthetic society has long been in the process of turning our long-standing universal human ethics on its head. The more numerous the laws, the more corrupt the state. Tacitus. Better said, more laws equals more tyranny. Lastly, if citizens are so immoral as to not be trusted, why do we trust the unaccountable elite who make up the laws but repeatedly commit crimes and atrocities in the name of their oligarchy? They say democracy, but that's code for oligarchy. Listen to Biden's "We the Government" speech. I happen to have that right here.
Opens with the words, as trite as it sounds, we the people. Well, it's time to remember that we the people are the government. You and I. Not some force in a distant capital. Not some powerful force that we have no control over. It's us. It's we the people.
We the people is the government. And how apropos. Ah, yes. Old Biden as Chairman Mao. And we're gonna come back to China and what's going on, but I want to talk about a few other things real quick because if you guys don't know, the anniversary of Tiananmen Square was just a few days ago, and so I want to talk about that and how that continues to be erased. Spook, to answer your question, does Christianity, in your eyes, at least condemn people who change genders? Well, I don't think you can change your gender, but what I would say is that yes, because at least look, I'm not speaking for all of Christianity, all right, or all of who proclaim to be in Christ. I can only speak to my understanding of Scripture and what the early church believed. And I can tell you that in the early church, there were men who would seek out surgeons, at least in one particular case mentioned by Justin Martyr, to become eunuchs, because Christ said very specifically that it's better to never marry so you can serve God. But he never put a restriction on that. And then Paul the Apostle talks about it some. So there's a tradition in the churches where some men don't marry. For the most part, though, the Catholic Church doesn't allow marriage because of the property that they own and the wealth. And then there's becomes an issue of property rights with the children versus the property rights of the church. And that's why they don't allow marriage. The Eastern Orthodox do. But there's a certain point in leadership that if you're married, you actually have to take a vow not to have sex with your spouse, which I think is absurd. I don't think that that's necessary, but whatever. If men want to put more laws on themselves than God has given to them, that is up to those men. But this is why I'm not in those organizations. So God made you who you are, the way you are, for his purposes. And you can choose to accept that, or you can choose to reject that. It is that simple. And as a man who has been through a lot of abuse and trauma that I don't believe I deserved, I can tell you that I accept that God allowed me to be in that circumstance. And I do think that if I hadn't gone through those things, I've said it for years, my daughter has heard it from me for years, that I would have been a different person. I maybe would be a more arrogant character. I might be quite a lot more wealthy because I wouldn't have had things, career things stop for me. I mean, probably one of the best jobs I could have got, at least temporary for the time. My ex-wife immediately blew up on me. And I was like a shoe-in on it. And, stopped doing all my artistic stuff for years. Still have never picked back up drawing, and I was a pretty good artist. I'm wasn't the best, but I'm pretty good. I would have gotten way better. I was actually getting really good, really good. And, that, I don't have the time or the patience to redo that, because I put myself last, and, that's just what I do. So, but yeah, no, I don't believe that there's any scripture changing who you are. Again, eunuchs were a thing, right? And God said, Christ said specifically that it would be better to be a eunuch than you know and serve God. And some people in the early church took that very seriously, very literally. So let's get into some of this other stuff. I definitely have at least another hour and a half. So I figured today would be about a 3-hour stream. So New Blue Ontario. You can find this reprinted several times elsewhere. CIA undermined the Nazifying Ukraine since 1953. So the reason why I bring this up is because Azov has switched its logo from a Nazi logo recently, if you haven't heard, to a unicorn-style logo, and there's some connection with Pride Month, supposedly. Like, these people wouldn't, murder you instantaneously. I promise you they will. If you are part of the LGBT. So what is this? Well, by Wayne Manson, January 8th, 2016. The recent declassification of over 3,800 documents by the Central Intelligence Agency provides detailed proof that since 1953, the CIA operated two major programs intent on not only destabilizing Ukraine, but Nazifying it with followers of World War II Ukrainian Nazi leader Stepan Bandera. The CIA programs span some 4 decades, starting as a paramilitary operation that provided funding and equipment for such anti-Soviet Ukrainian resistance groups as the Ukrainian Supreme Liberation Council. Its affiliates and organizations of Ukraine Nationalist and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, all Nazi Banderists. The CIA also provided support to a relatively anti-Bandera faction of the UHVR, the ZP-UHVR, a foreign-based virtual branch of the CIA and British MI6 intelligence services. So the deep state, folks, the real people running things. I hate it when people start going on about it's the Jews. The Jews run the world. It's like, dude, there are so many other competing factors than a media that is run by rich Jewish people or some banking systems. It is far more darker and far more complex than that simple thing. These are factions that are together that know they have power, and it's driven by individual lust and power, and people who wish to suppress the truth, to build a synthetic society, to bring you in and to manipulate you. This is abuse. It's horrible. It's what they do. It's all they know. The early CIA operation to destabilize Ukraine using exile Ukrainian agents in the West who were infiltrated into Soviet Ukraine was codenamed Project Aerodynamic. A former top secret CIA document dated July 13th, 1953 provides a description of Aerodynamic. The purpose of Project Aerodynamic is to provide for the exploitation and expansion of the anti-Soviet Ukrainian resistance for Cold War and hot war purposes. Such groups as the Ukrainian Supreme Council of Liberation and its Ukrainian Insurgent Army, the foreign representation of the Ukrainian Supreme Council of Liberation in Western Europe and United States, and other organizations such as the OUNB will be utilized. The CIA admitted in a 1970 formerly secret document that it had been in contact with the ZPUHVR since 1950. And I'm tired of reading letters here, so I'm just going to continue. It says the one organization was the Bandera faction of that organization, or the other of the similar name, that is, and its neo-Nazi sympathizers are today found embedded in the Ukrainian national government in Kiev and in regional and municipal governments throughout the country. Aerodynamic placed field agents inside Soviet Ukraine, who in turn established contact with Ukrainian resistance movement, particularly SB. Agents from the OUN who are already operating inside Ukraine. The CIA arranged for airdrops of communications, equipment, and other supplies, presumably including arms and ammunition, to the secret CIA army in Ukraine. Most of the CIA's Ukrainian agents received training in West Germany from the U.S. Army Foreign Intelligence, Political and Psychological Branch. Communications between the CIA agents in the Ukraine and their West handlers were conducted by two-way walkie-talkie, shortwave via international postal channels, and clandestine airborne and overland couriers. Spook stuff, basically. Spy stuff. Agents airdropped into Ukraine carried a kit that contained, among other items, a pin gun with tear gas, an Arctic sleeping bag, a camp axe, a trench tool, a pocket knife, a chocolate wafer, a Minnow camera, and a 35 millimeter Lycia camera. Lycia? I don't know. Film, a Soviet toiletry kit, a Soviet cap and jacket, a 22 caliber pistol and bullets, and rubber contraceptives for waterproofing film. Other agents, so condoms, condoms can have multiple uses, right? Other agents were issued radio sets, generators, nickel, cadmium batteries, and homing beacons. CIA documents show that Aerodynamic continued in operation through the Richard Nixon administration into the 1970s. We're also going to talk about Nixon today. If we're going to talk about China, we need to talk about Nixon. The program took on more of psychological warfare operations veneer than a real-world facsimile of John Lee Carrier Behind the Iron Curtain spy novel. The CIA set up a propaganda company in Manhattan that created and printed and published anti-Soviet literature that would be smuggled into Ukraine. They knew battleground would not be swampy retreats near Odessa and cold deserts. Odessa's in Russia. So, cold deserts and warehouses in Kiev, but at the center of the world in publishing and broadcast media. The CIA front company was Prologue Research and Publishing Associate Incorporated, which later became known simply as Prologue. The CIA codename for Prologue was a tenure. The group published the Ukrainian language Prologue magazine. CIA reference to Prologue, non-profit tax exempt cover company for the ZP whatever legal activities. However, the secret CIA document does not state that the funds for Prologue were passed to the New York office via Denver and Los Angeles, and receipts were furnished. Prologue showing fund origin to backstop questioning by New York fiscal authorities. So basically, they had to circumvent the government. The government had to circumvent itself from finding out what it was doing. As for the Munich office of Prologue, the CIA document states that the funding for it comes from an account separate from that of New York and from a cooperating bank, which also remains classified. In 1967, the CIA merged the activities of Prologue Munich and the Munich office of the Ukrainian exiled nationalist Nationalist Journal. The Munich office also supported the Ukraine Galashtoff for it's German, guys. That's fru. Well, there's no umlaut, so I guess that is fur. They're not spelling it right, but it should be fru. Ausland student. So whatever. My German's terrible anymore. I don't use it. The CIA documents also indicate that the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation agents may have interfered with aerodynamic agents in New York. And in 67, CIA directive advised all ZPUHVR agents in the United States to either report their contacts, yada, yada, yada. And this goes on. But basically, the point of this, it's quite a long thing, right, is that we implanted these neo-Nazi sympathizers in the Ukraine. And now the synthetic world and the synthetic media and the synthetic society is trying to tell you they're not Nazis in Ukraine. That didn't happen. Oh, my friend. There are 100%. How about this for CIA shenanigans, folks? BuzzFeed has really turned itself around. I'll tell you what, maybe not 100%, but they're starting to put out good content. It's been years. They've done nothing but trash. I think, I guess they were getting just, trounced and had to change. Secret CIA files say staffers committed sex crimes involving children. They would never do that now, would they? They're all a bunch of abusers. This was back from December of 2021. But you'll hear about this here and there, and we're gonna talk about this, the abuse and abusers and the scandals and how they are covered up. Now, we all know about Epstein, but this, my friends, is not Epstein. This goes on and on and on throughout the history of the United States as a fascistic nation. And I mean that. We have been a fascistic nation. Soft fascism, folks. The corporations are not independent and free of the government. They are subsidized by the government. Mind you, that's part of the 10 planks of communism as well. And with that, the government gives them special contracts and bidding rights in which they get propped up and held up. It's not any sort of free market at all. It's not capitalism, as Marx put it. Now, people try to frame it that way, but it's not. It's the government propping up what the government wants to prop up. And these companies are happy to do the bidding of the government, like, let's say, Facebook, Google, YouTube, which is part of Google, of course, Twitter, where we are censoring people. Why do you think the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter is such a big deal? because they can't have their narrative control for the synthetic society. They're literally abusers. They wish to groom your kids. They wish to have sex with your children. And they wish to abuse you and gaslight you and tell you that none of that is happening. Over the past 14 years, the Central Intelligence Agency has secretly amassed credible evidence that at least 10 of its employees and contractors committed sexual crimes involving children. That's a lowball number, folks. It's a lot more than that. I promise you, this article is addressing just 10 people. It's in the thousands, I guarantee. Now, I don't know how many people the CIA employs, but let's not talk about just the CIA. Let's talk about the FBI and other organizations in a moment. We'll get there. Though most of the cases were referred to U.S. attorney for prosecution, only one of the individuals was ever charged with a crime. Prosecutors sent the rest of the cases back to the CIA to handle internally. How are you going to handle internally molesting children, scarring them the rest of their lives, never to have truly a functioning, like a proper functioning relationship again? People get through it and they have relationships. Don't get me wrong. They can have very loving relationships, but there are always issues, just like there will always be issues with me. But most of these cases were referred to, and mind you, when I say that, God has healed me of many of those issues, but I still have issues, right? There are things that I still, that abuse still affects. The most of the cases referred to the U.S. attorney. Only one of the individuals ever charged in the crime. Prosecutors sent the rest of the cases back to the CIA to handle internally, meaning few faced any consequences beyond the possible loss of their jobs and security clearances. That marks a striking deviation from how sex crimes involving children have been handled at other federal agencies, such as the Department of Homeland Security and the Drug Enforcement Administration. CIA insiders say the agency resists prosecution of its staff for fear cases will reveal state secrets. Well, the state should not have those secrets in the first place. People justify this all the time. I don't believe that the federal government should be keeping secrets from its citizens. Joe Biden made a promise to be the most transparent administration ever. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. The revelations are contained in hundreds of internal agency reports obtained by BuzzFeed News through Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. One employee had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was fired. A second employee purchased 3 sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. A third employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments, yet he worked for the government. Who is our government hiring? How many times do I have to show you folks this? I know you listen. You're here every week. You're going to watch me. How many other folks need to hear this, need to see this, need to understand this? Over and over again, the abuse is rampant. The government is out of control. It is unaccountable. It doesn't work in its current form. And there will be a war over this. Not the grooming, not the abusing, but just, or sorry, not the abusing of children specifically, but just the fact that they are completely unaccountable. And the worst thing is the saints will suffer the most. Because there are plenty of innocent people in this, but none are all good or moral. But those who would live good and moral and try to uphold those things and be leaders of those things, who try to speak out, they will be the most persecuted. You think I don't understand whether my channel ever gets big or not? I could have 5 viewers for the next 5 years. You think I don't understand that the government gets wind of things that I say, that they won't maybe do something about it? Brandon Strzok was at January 6th, didn't go inside the building. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure he has nearly been wiped off the map. Why? Because he started the walk away movement, and that was too powerful. Too powerful to allow him to continue freely. Yet, what do they do with these? Oh, you're fired. Slap on the wrist. Yeah, I guess you can't be an agent anymore. The records do not say what action, if any, the CIA took against him. A contractor who arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent posing as a child had his contract revoked. That's some crazy stuff. But that tells you too how the glowies function, doesn't it? Glowies working with each other, trying to set each other up. We just have to look at the Gretchen Whitmer case, right? How they set that up. Only one of the individuals cited in these documents was charged with a crime. In that case, as in the only previously known cases of a CIA staffer being charged with child sexual crimes, the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. The CIA did not answer detailed questions, saying only that the agency takes all allegations of possible criminal misconduct committed by personnel seriously. Spokesperson for the Eastern District of Virginia, where many of the criminal referrals were sent, also did not answer detailed questions, saying the district takes seriously its responsibility to hold accountable federal government employees who violate federal law within our jurisdiction. For former officials who are familiar with how internal investigations work at intelligence agencies told BuzzFeed there are many reasons the prosecutors might not pursue a criminal case. One of them, familiar with the workings of the CIA office of the Inspector General, said the agency is concerned that in a criminal case, it would lose control of sensitive information. Well, of course it would. That's what everybody's worried about in criminal and civil cases. It's called discovery. And discovery will screw you if you have sins to hide. If you have secrets from the world, discovery will destroy you. The former official who reviewed the declassified Inspector General report characterized the concern for the CIA lawyers as, "We can't have these people testify. They may inadvertently be forced to disclose sources and methods." So what does that mean? That means that anyone in the CIA has automatic immunity. It means they get a free ticket to do whatever they want. The official who noted the agency has had a problem with child abuse images stretching back decades said they understand the need to protect sensitive and classified inequalities. Or that's not inequalities. Why I filled that in. Sensitive and classified equities. However, for crimes of a certain class, whether it's an intelligence agency or not, you just have to figure out how to prosecute these people. Sexual crimes involving children, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies and handled sensitive information. In a November 9th report, or 2009 report, that is, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees American spy satellites, an organization you've probably never heard of, right? The NRO, acknowledged viewing images of child sexually abused during polygraph examinations. In a symposium in 2006, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security officer, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. The child abuse revelations are drawn from an unprecedented release of reports by the CIA Office of the Inspector General. Now, folks, I need to tell you something if you didn't know, but the CIA is highly tied into the occult as well as all of these agencies. They have done horrible experiments to mankind, horrible things. They have deposed leaders, governments that other nations approved of, that is, the people of those nations. This is not an organization to be admired in any way, shape, or form. It is wholly and purely evil, and there is no excuse for it. The OSS that was created during the Second World War was a legitimate agency at the time. But what happens in government is once these things take root, they do nothing but expand like a leviathan. They become a hydra with multiple heads, and you cannot stop them unless you chop every head off, right? And the only way to do that is to get at the heart of the beast, and that's the bureaucracy, this swamp in DC. I'm telling you right now, Tim Pool was talking about those orgs earlier. I've told it to you a million times on this show. I know these kids. They run these orgs on the right in DC. It's part of my wife's work. And granted, we've been focused on our family a lot more, but when we were in DC, going and visiting friends, and they had parties or whatever was going on, whatever event, they're most of them are no more moral than anyone else. They don't hold to these things, and most of them aren't very well educated, and they believe in the synthetic thing that is put out there by the society. They believed Orange Man was bad. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They believe the left wing when they make up certain arguments that are absolutely absurd, because they want to give the benefit of the doubt. Well, it's time to not do that. It's time to stop being gaslit and abused. This article goes on and on. There are documents. You can go look into it yourself. Secret CIA files says staffer committed sex crimes involving children. Some serious stuff. Serious stuff. And it's sickening. It's absolutely horrid. Oh. So that's going to bring me to old Ted Gunderson. Ted Gunderson was a FBI chief, the head at I think LA and Texas, if not mistaken. And he just waiting for all these things to load up, folks. So he believed that there were satanic sex cults in the United States. And, I think the guy has a pretty good reputation. Spook, you had to get out. Sorry about that, man. I know I can't always keep up with chat doing the one-man show. So I just happened to find this article. I was looking for things about Ted Gunderson. In fact, I just did a little DuckDuckGo search. And so these two articles toward the top, I thought, well, educate yourself. I've known about this video here. We're going to show some of. We're going to talk about it, but I want to read the beginning of this article at least first. Ted Gunderson, death of a public paranoid. Okay. Former Special Agent Ted Gunderson suspected he would be taken out eventually. As a whistleblower disclosing crimes of the highest order, let's do this. Looks nicer. I care for aesthetics, folks. I really do. um, as a whistleblower disclosing crimes of the highest order, Gunderson would attest to suffering endless harassment and attempts on his life from operatives entering his home to sneak poisonous liquids in the water heaters, phone tapping, personal computer hacking, and years of surveillance by groups and individuals and in ground vehicles, helicopters, and on foot. Of course, there are references there. So we're not going to get that far in this article because I'm going to show you various sources. Agents of his undoing were everywhere. Law enforcement were worse than helpless. They were complicit. Gunderson said, I just don't understand it. In an interview from an undisclosed southwestern city while on the road from his would-be assassins, I thought the FBI would help me instead. They're trying to destroy me. And what did they do to Snowden? Chelsea Manning. You know? And I won't dead name Chelsea because I don't, was it? Oh, it was Bradley Manning, wasn't it? I don't remember his name. So, anyways, the FBI, and I don't really care if he wants to go by Chelsea, honestly. I think the guy's got issues. The FBI, Gunderson asserted, was assisting in having him silenced for exposing the collusion between a satanic cult and the United States Army in a high-profile triple homicide ritual murder. By Gunderson's account, involving a mother and her two daughters at Fort Bragg, United States Army installation in North Carolina. It all sounded unbelievable, but what separated him from countless other suspected delusives of the paranoid kind was that Gunderson, a private investigator himself, was a 27-year veteran of the Bureau who had headed 3 regional offices, serving 3 directors from J. Edgar Hoover to Judge William Webster. He was, in fact, an impressively credentialed G-man whose retirement party in 1979 had drawn an elite crowd of over 600. His book, How to Locate Anyone Anywhere, included endorsement blurbs from Johnny Carson and even President Gerald Ford, who took the opportunity to publicly congratulate Gunderson on his fine career. So I want you all to recall back in the way back recesses of your mind, all of a sudden, all of the wonderful, credentialed, and just absolutely outstanding doctors who were called conspiracy theorists, kooks, and completely decredentialed overnight like that because, well, they didn't agree with the Koof narrative. I didn't agree with the Koof narrative either. Guess who was right? Me and those doctors, not the synthetic society. Yet there he was implicating the Bureau in anti-American, even anti-human crimes, informing the Associated Press that he had been brutally reduced to living from a suitcase and associating with criminals in a lifestyle that was a stark contrast to his decorated career. Naturally, suspicions were aroused, publicly expressed by associates of Ted's on various online sites. But that didn't happen when Gunderson came out. He actually started doing this, right? It said he retired in 79, and he actually started speaking out in the 80s and doing private investigations. He was kind of a favorite on the talk show circuit and stuff. And I've talked about him here in the past. Naturally, suspicions were aroused when it was learned that Gunderson had been declared dead on July 31st, 2011, allegedly from complications related to cancer, and only just under 30 years from the time he revealed that the FBI was trying to have him silenced. Prematurely robbed of his dissenting voice at the age of 83. No, that's life expectancy. Admittedly, 30 years is a long time to have a man silenced, long enough, in fact, that he should have been able to disclose everything proprietary in that time, and conceded 83 is a bit old age to claim premature death, especially when the 83-year-old in question did in fact have cancer. But in order to understand the suspicion surrounding Gunderson's death, it's important to understand that the whole of Ted Gunderson's story to appreciate the shadow of fear. The what is that? The I don't know that word. Paranoia, discontent. Well, the best way to figure that out, if you don't know a word, yeah, look it up. I probably know the word. I just can't read it. Oh, miasma. Okay. Or miasma. Wonderful. Anyways, the shadow of fear, the miasma of paranoid discontent that he so actively endangered throughout his life, and the world of Ted Gunderson, every seemingly arbitrary idiosyncrasy, every obscure sign of construction, from the random held significant or signification aimed exonerably toward one unifying narrative. It says indisputable though his credentials were, the believability of his accusations against the FBI were routinely diluted by the innumerable bombastic conspiracist claims he would make through the years. And now I'm going to show you some of that. Okay. So this, again, I burnt just so I could have it. You can find it here. Ted Gunderson, FBI whistleblower. And, for anyone's information, I am not necessarily suggesting that these things are all true or all not true, but they definitely should be looked into and investigated. And there is a dearth of evidence to suggest that some of these things are true. Go look into the founders and the connection with the FBI. Or sorry, not the founders, the Finders organization and the connection to the FBI. Go look into Boys Town, which we are going to talk about here very soon.
Is the CIA an army of individuals who have a license to kill? It's like Murder Incorporated, right?
Oh, are you kidding? The CIA makes the mafia look like a Sunday school class. I mean, this is the problem with what's actually happening in Afghanistan. Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993. Our government was involved in some of those. I can't say all of them because I don't know, but I do have documentation that there was government implication in some of these. And we'll discuss them as we go.
Well, Ted, the people out there, I mean, did you know that the World Trade Center went up when it was bombed internally? That it all was put together by an organization called the FBI.
Is that this 1993?
93.
Yeah. Yes.
He's talking about the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Do you know that story about how the FBI got tried to get a Muslim, American Muslim, to be a sympathizer of radical Islam to bomb the building? And it was a big deal because I remember it. I was a young teen or tween. And when that happened, it was a big deal. When 9/11 happened, my mind went immediately back to that. But the evidence that the FBI did this was not instituted immediately. It was later on that it came out that they did such a thing. Remember Ruby Ridge, folks. Remember Waco, right? Remember Wounded Knee. Much older, but still.
I had and I'll show this on camera, a newspaper article from the New York Times, and it was also an article in the LA Times, by the way, and it's dated October 28, 1993. And it's a result of testimony in the trial, and the informant, the FBI informant in the trial, a fellow named Salam, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer.
Imam Salam.
Right, he was the informant for the FBI, and he recorded his conversations secretly with this. So,
And if he didn't record the FBI, that man would be spending his entire life in jail. And again, who are the terrorists? Is it your average citizen, or is it your government who is abusing you and gaslighting you and honeypotting you into, I don't know, trying to kidnap governors? Trying to go inside the federal building? Burn it down? Why aren't they going after Antifa? Steven Crowder infiltrated Antifa. James O'Keefe infiltrated Antifa. You think that our intelligence agencies can't solve that problem overnight? Like, literally. It would take days to get that taken care of. Because they would get a list. They have all the names. I guarantee you, those people are not as bright as they think that they are, and information leaks. I'll tell you why people on the right don't rise up, because we're all afraid that not the Antifa, that the FBI and the CIA are going to round us up individually. Where everyone's concerned that the guy talking about some sort of insurrection, if you would, is going to end up being a Fed, a glowy, and they're going to spend the rest of their time in prison. Now, I don't advocate for revolution and those things in the first place, but I'm telling you, that is why it doesn't happen. Unless you have a team who knows each other quite well, who has worked together quite well, like, say, in the military or something, and you trust each other with your lives, are you going to get that kind of security? Criminals don't have that kind of security amongst each other. Someone always talks. There's always a way to find it out. Always. And I can tell you this, you'll tell on yourself. As I got better to some degree with dating and my confidence and other things I mentioned earlier, one thing I would find was women who want to catfish, right? I did a lot of online dating, and I would start to catch them in their lies. I didn't run across too many catfish, but had one that actually helped me through a difficult time, but had one basically, because of my own personal investigative skills, have to admit everything to me. And then, as far as I know, she just went up and started doing it again. But the point is that I catch those things because once I catch the glimpse that someone is trying to manipulate me, I immediately start playing dumb and start getting information. It's not hard to call these things out. It's not hard to say that person's lying. But your average, common, everyday man, maybe they don't have some of the skills that I've acquired over my life. Maybe they're too trusting. They don't have enough sense to call the FBI or the local police and report the FBI. But this is what they do, folks. It's what they do.
When it came time for trial, he said, hey, wait a minute, here's what really happened. Now, he told the FBI in advance that they were going to bomb it. He was assigned, given the assignment to put the bomb together. And he went to his supervisor, his FBI supervisor, and said, we're going to put a dummy bomb in here, right? And the FBI supervisor said, no, we're going to put a real bomb.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's name names. John Antiseth.
Was the supervisor.
Yeah, he was the supervisor for the FBI, and he winds up in with having something to do with the Kenya investigation. So here's a guy who's involved in setting up the World Trade Center for to be.
Okay. Now, if you don't remember, or you're too young, or you never heard about this, there was a bombing in Kenya. I actually served under one of my first sergeants was at that bombing. He worked at the embassy at the time. There was the USS Cole, and there were all these little bombing and attacks that were going on leading up to 9/11 and the invasion of the Middle East. But before that, of course, as you all know, we depose the democratically elected government of Iran and put in a puppet Shah who was a tyrant because he was favorable to the U.S. for oil. We messed with them first. And just like Ukraine, we continue messing and meddling. Well, Mossad's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing, man. There's always the dancing Israelis too, right? The 9/11 thing. So there are questions. There are questions. I don't know the truth to all of it. I think what is more likely is that given that bin Laden worked for the CIA, that they worked with him and did other things in conjunction with to make that thing happen.
Blown up, and it resulted in the deaths of six individuals, over 1,000 injured, nearly $100 million.
$500 million.
A lot of millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars, yeah.
And
in debt property damage.
Right now,
Yeah. And he's going to go on, and I just for the second time, I'm not going to watch this whole video. I showed you guys where you could find it. But look, you really have to understand this. The Oklahoma City bombing from Timothy McVeigh was because of Ruby Ridge and Waco. It was because of these things that the U.S. government kept doing. Now, the media tried to spin it as McVeigh was some sort of just right-wing terrorist, It was not the case. He thought if the government was going to murder women and children, which it did. Now, fortunate Randy Weaver was compensated. Those people at Waco, most did not survive. But he thought if they were going to murder women and children, then he would murder their women and children, which is why he bombed that building. Spook said he was framed. Well, okay, if you say so, man. What's his name? Why can't I? Gore Vidal interviewed Timothy McVeigh, and I've seen many interviews with Timothy McVeigh, and I don't think McVeigh was framed. But hey, whatever. I mean, I don't know everything. Yeah, exactly. He's confessed numerous times. And like I said, Gore Vidal, who was a left-leaning or a liberal, an actual liberal, concerned about civil rights and that kind of stuff, not special rights and extra rights, but actual freedoms and government overreach. He interviewed McVeigh numerous times. He's a dying breed of journalists that doesn't exist anymore. Well, maybe we still got Glenn Greenwald. Strippy, you can't play dumb when you're dumb. Well, you do. I mean, come on, man. Like, obviously, I don't do this off the top of my head and remember all these things as a stupid person. And just like the left always does, you are projecting your own inability to understand simple things onto me. That's, I mean, I can't put together a show like this. I literally put the show together in an hour, like the hour basic or 2 hours before I started. Stupid people are not capable of doing this. I've a lot of experience with stupid people. But sure, my my IQ that's in the upper percentiles, the 2 percentile, 1 percentile range, that I'm a dumb person. Yeah. Okay. Anyways. So that, my friends, brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. Because if you hadn't figured it out, these are repeating patterns. And again, the government is an abuser. By the way, Strippy, thanks for watching, dude. The government is an abuser, and it encourages abuse. It allows it, and it revels in it. And it's because, well, these people revel in their immorality, in their power, and many of them are actually occultists. Now, to prove that to you is a whole nother thing. But I can tell you, if you look up things about Hillary Clinton and spiritualists and mediums, you'll find that she consults them. She's just an example. But let's talk about Megan Fox, not the author, the writer, the journalist that I read from earlier, but the movie starlet who doesn't do anything other than be really stunning. I mean, she's a very beautiful woman, but like, she doesn't really have much of a career as far as I know. She was kind of an it girl for a little bit and I guess settled down. I don't know. She admitted to ritual drinking of blood here a few weeks back, right? But you all just don't pay attention. You all just don't want to believe. You want to suspend the belief for sunshine and rainbows and whatever makes you happy. Just like, the news and media suppresses that LGBT couples have higher rates of domestic abuse. Because that goes against the narrative. But that is 100% the reality. Or that a lot of inappropriate relationships, not necessarily pedophilia, but quite inappropriate age differences happens in that community as well. I mean, they just advertise it. Desmond is amazing. No, he's not. That little boy, that poor little boy, it's going to be so messed up. And they'll go, when he kills himself or a bunch of people, they'll go, well, it's because he wasn't able to transition properly. It's like, no, what's your excuse? This kid's done, his mom's put this upon him. He's done this his whole life. Here we have the Franklin child abuse scandal, stunning cover-up of child prostitution ring for wealthy elitist and political leaders. This is an article about what is known as Boys Town. Boys Town was, oh wow, it was playing in the background. Was covered in a documentary called A Conspiracy of Silence, and it was to be released, and it was not. In fact, let's read the description here. Conspiracy of Silence, a documentary listed for viewing on TV Guide magazine, was to be aired on the Discovery Channel on May 3rd, 1994. This documentary exposed a network of religious leaders and Washington politicians who flew children to D.C. for sex orgies. Many children suffered the indignity of wearing nothing but their underwear, and a number displayed on pieces of cardboard hanging from their necks when they began being auctioned off to foreigners in Las Vegas, Nevada, Toronto, and Canada. At the last minute before airing, unknown congressmen threatened the cable TV industry with restrictive legislation if this documentary was aired. Almost immediately, the rights of the documentary were purchased by unknown persons who had ordered all copies destroyed. A copy of this videotape was furnished anonymously to former Nebraska state senator and attorney John D. Kemp, who made it available to retired FBI chief Ted L. Gunderson. While the video quality is not top grade, this tape is a blockbuster, and what is revealed by the participants involved. You need to watch this if you've never seen it. And you can look it up, Conspiracy of Silence. You can find it here on Archive. And you can find allusions to it or things here from educateyourself.org, a section on Mr. Gunderson and his files. I'm going to scroll through these so you can see how many files there are. The Finders was another group I was talking about. I don't know if it was Atrocity Guide. It might be. This is a channel on YouTube I like. Atrocity Guide releases stuff occasionally, like once a month or so, because they're really well edited and documented and researched videos. And if she didn't do a video on this, there was another channel that did. And I'll try to remember so I can refer you guys at some other point. It won't be today, of course, but next Sunday, perhaps. And the Finders, well, we'll just go through here. By the way, folks, this is adult content. If you have little kids in the room, I mean, it's up to you. But I know I try not to curse on the stream or anything like that, but this is serious content, so understand that. The kidnapping of children for the purposes of prostitution, pornography, high-tech weaponry, experimental abuse, mind control abuse, child slave labor for underground alien-controlled facilities. Well, that's interesting, right? White sex slavery and satanic ritual murder of untold thousands of American children snatched from the streets and playgrounds of America by agents working for the CIA is the principal reason for the existence of the covert CIA operation called the Finders. It's one of the most alarming and despicable covert operations against American children that Gunderson investigation helped to uncover, but it's only one of the many covert Gestapo-like acts committed against the Americans. Okay, well, we'll just do this. Finders Cult. Notice the search results right away. FBI, CIA. Oh, well, really graceful. I've never seen her video of this, but she does excellent work as well. Let's see who else has videos, because you guys, again, I'm not going to sit here and research all this, but you really, really should. I'm wondering if this is the video I saw that was done well. No, I don't believe so. I don't remember that. In any case, I trust in my audience to be intelligent people and to be able to look it up on their own. Quite chilling, though. But do you understand? Do you get why I'm going on about how our society is fake and synthetic and how you're being gaslit and abused at every moment? Now, I opened this with myself talking about the Heard Depp case. And I did that because that is a clear example of abuse and how that affects people. It has affected me, not that case, but the abuse I went through my first wife, because it still affects me to this day. And when your government is doing this all the time to people and people are confused about their identity and they are, oh, I don't know, like starting to shoot up schools and other places, you might think that there's something wrong. But no, it's the gun's fault, right? I mean, it certainly wasn't the truck's fault in Waukesha that ran over 40 some odd people. Now, was it? No, that man wanted to kill some white people. And he wanted to kill some white people because he had been gaslit to believe that white people are the pinnacle of all evil. That they have a special kind of property, being white, and therefore special privileges. And they just can't see it because, well, it helps to enrich them, so they can't see that black man's plight. But that black man who did those horrible things, he's not looking at the poor white trash that lives next door to him or down the street or whatever, or all the other people who have problems and have no power and authority over him. And he might even still say, well, they have it too good. And it's something I despise when black people, because generally my interactions with black folks go pretty well, but every now and again you get one who's got their head up their butt and they're a complete narcissist and everything's about them being black and being hated for that. And you know what that is, folks? That is gaslighting. That is a person who has some sort of narcissistic personality disorder. There's a lot of it in the black community. Why do you think that black women are propped up as the pinnacle of oppression? The same community that was that their fathers were stripped away purposefully. It's absolutely insane. I don't know. Let's talk a couple more things real quick here. Let these load up. This would be the last leg of the show, guys. I'm going to try and get out in the next 20 minutes. So bear with me. But this last part should go rather quickly. So from the Wall Street Journal, we have Chinese influencers ice cream pitch inadvertently introduces fans to Tiananmen Square massacre. Why do I bring this up? Well, the anniversary of Tiananmen Square was, just a few days ago. And what was it? Was it the 3rd? I believe that's when it is. And oh, no, it was June 5th. So, okay, I thought it was the 3rd. So it is today. Let's see, I got several other articles here. No, one of them will have a date in it. CNN. June 4th. Okay. You see how this works? The synthetic society? That you can't even get your dates straight. 25 years later, Tank Man photographer reflects on Tiananmen Square. On June 5th, excuse me. On June 5th, 1989, Associated Press photographer Jeff Widener snapped the Tank Man photo during a crackdown on pro-democracy protesters in Beijing Tiananmen Square, which became one of the most iconic photos of the 20th century. The photographer on the visit to Hong Kong talks about some of the lesser-known images he took during the tumultuous period. And it says one of China's biggest online influencers stepped on a political landmine while promoting an ice cream product on Friday. In the process, he set off a wave of curiosity about the government's bloody 1989 crackdown on Tiananmen Square protesters among hordes of fans too young to remember. And it has talked about, I could have archived this if I wanted to read the whole thing, but it wasn't the point. The polling done now says that most people of the current generations, the younger generations who are 30 or younger, 35 or younger even, have no idea about Tiananmen Square, as if it never happened or existed. Several arrested as Hong Kong police restrict public ceremony or commemoration, that is, of Tiananmen Square anniversary. This is where we're going, folks. Hong Kong police said that 6 people were arrested near Victoria Park on Saturday, June 4th, as public commemoration of Tiananmen Square massacre was restricted. It has been 33 years since Chinese troops opened fire on student protesters in Beijing. UK documents released in 2017 estimate that at least 10,000 people died. Vigils were held every year up until 2020, when a national security law was introduced. Public commemoration to mark the 33rd anniversary was effectively banned, with officials citing coronavirus restrictions. And here is a Taiwan visual. Taiwanese locals joined survivors, activists, and artists in Taipei's Freedom Square Saturday to mark the 33rd anniversary of China's violent suppression of the Tiananmen Square democracy protest by the People's Liberation Army. Now, I will tell you this. Tiananmen Square did effectively change the way that China interacted with its populace. And I mean, they actually became, to some degree, less authoritarian. But what they actually developed in the process is what is called the social credit system. And they are what you have to understand is that they are the beta testing for that. Because we have the ESG scores that will be implemented. Well, they already are implemented, but they are implemented or will be implemented upon you directly. Everyone talks about the Chinese social credit score and how it's good or bad or whatever. Sometimes they'll bring up the Black Mirror episode, but what you need to understand is that it's already here, and China is the model that we would like to go after. Another a-hole. I'm trying to, I don't know what you, I just see some random stuff in the chat. I guess I'll get context later. I'll look at it. And then, of course, in Hong Kong, memories of China's Tiananmen Square massacre are being erased. A version of the story appeared in CNN's Meanwhile in China letter, a three times a week update exploring what you see. Okay. So essentially, like I said, it's being erased, right? Well, here we have some sophists. Workers' World. Like, that's not going to be a sophist freaking publication. But hey, I'll read from it. I as far as leftist publications go, I much prefer Jacobin. They're actually honest generally about what they're doing. But yeah, these guys are nuts. The 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre was a myth. No. Deidre Griswold. No, I don't think so. I don't think so, Deidre. I think you're a liar. I think you're a sophist. I think that, yeah, that you don't care for liberty or freedom. You care about your bottom line. And so you'll sell everyone out in the process, including your own soul, to hope that they never come after you and to enrich yourself. You're a horrible person. The article below was first published in June 29, 2011, following the release of WikiLeaks confirming that U.S. media claims of a massacre in Tiananmen Square in Beijing in 1989 were false. However, many times we have been told that the U.S. is an open society and that the media are free. Yeah, well, who's telling you that? Who's telling you that? Usually such claims are made with criticizing other countries for not being open, especially countries that don't follow Washington's agenda. Well, that is true. Like I said, I have agreements with lefties. I believe that our government is corrupt like lefties, but the lefties keep supporting the corrupt government. That's the difference. You think that giving the government more power somehow is going to make it less corrupt because you are a fool. If you live in the United States and depend on the supposedly free and open commercial media for information, you would without a doubt believe that the Chinese government massacred hundreds, perhaps thousands of students in Tiananmen Square on June 4th, 1989. That perhaps, that phrase has been repeated tens of thousands of times by the media of this country, but it's a myth. Furthermore, the U.S. government knows it's a myth, and all the major media know it too. But they refuse to correct the record because of the basic hostility of the U.S. imperialistic ruling class to China. And that's what the crux of this comes down to. The imperial class of China. Give me a minute, guys. Sorry, the wife had to come in. But yeah, how about this is the Chinese imperialism. Why don't you care about that, author? How about the imperialism of the stated goal of communism, of being the the uh the end goal for the entire earth? What about that colonization, colonizer? See, none of my beliefs are any of that. I let you be. I want you to leave me be, but you can't. It's part of your religion. It's part of your religion that you must make other people do what you think is right. And 80% of the time, what you think is right is wrong. You should give me a study, leftists, so I can then tell you that the methodology of the study is nonsense, because it is almost every time. That's why there isn't over 80%, it's almost 90% replication problem in the social sciences. But you don't know any of that because you don't live in the real world. You live in the synthetic world. On what do we base these assertions? Several sources. The most recent is a WikiLeaks release of cables sent from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing to the State Department in June, a few days after the event in China. Second is an assertion in the November 1989 by the Beijing bureau chief of the New York Times, an assertion that has never been referred to by that paper. And third is the account of what happened by the Chinese government itself, which is collaborated by the first two. Okay, I'm going to trust China and the Wuhan lab stuff and everything that they did, and they're just being fair. And, I'm not going to trust my own eyes where a man stands in front of a tank that then proceeds to go run over him. Yeah, but it didn't happen. And the people in Taiwan and Hong Kong, the free states of China, and Hong Kong's barely free anymore, but has some more than mainland. That those people are celebrating a lie too? That the Chinese government changed its entire direction on how it treated its citizens because of some lie. Yeah, I don't believe you. Sorry. WikiLeaks censored. Only one major Western newspaper has published the WikiLeaks cables. That was the Telegraph of London on June 4th of this year, exactly 22 years after the Chinese government called out the troops in Beijing. So, mind you guys, this was 2011, right? That this article was written. Two cables dated from July 7th, more than a month after the fighting. A Chilean diplomat provided an eyewitness account of the soldiers entering Tiananmen Square. He watched the military enter the square and did not observe any mass firing of weapons into the crowd, although sporadic gunfire was heard. He said that most of the troops which entered the square were actually armed only with anti-riot gear. Yeah. I really doubt it. And so what? The following cable statement. A Chilean diplomat provided an eyewitness account of the soldiers entering Tiananmen Square. Although gunfire could be heard, he said that apart from some beating of students, there was no mass firing into the crowd of students at the moment. Maybe he didn't see it. Or maybe he's lying. Did I thoroughly, if you've been with me long enough, tell you what was going on about human rights abuses in South America during COVID lockdowns? I mean, I wouldn't trust the Chilean government. Really, any government in South America. They're been utterly corrupt for hundreds of years. I mean, from the beginning, that's why they have so many problems. They're either overtly fascist or overtly communist, more or less. And they're highly pagan, which it's because the Catholic Church's influence. But again, that's another stream. So here it says it should be remembered that Chile at the time was ruled by I can never say his name right. It's just the wording, guys. You have to understand that it's dyslexia. It's weird. Anyways, he was a fascist, right? Who had come to power in the violent anti-socialist U.S. supported right-wing coup. Dude, the U.S. supports coups all over the place as long as they can get power over other people, just like you do. You freaking sophist. If it empowered you in your beliefs, you would support a coup too. You're just mad that you didn't get the power to do it. Your people weren't put in. And then why do I know this? Because I can go on freaking tanky Twitter or on Reddit and I can see what people are talking about. Very disturbed people, mind you, that understand nothing about life. It's all fantasy. It's all fake. Like our friend Strippy over there on Entropy. It says, in which thousands of leftists, including President Salvatore Alidini, had, was it Pinchot? I know his name. I know he had a weird thing with, didn't he keep like his wife or something encapsulated in glass? I can't recall everything all the time, guys, but yeah, there's weird stuff there. The Chilean diplomat referred to would have been no friend of China. How do you know that? We have diplomats that have different affiliations. And just because he didn't see anything, again, doesn't mean it didn't happen. And who reported that thousands of people shot into the crowd all at once? That wasn't the report. The report was that the army, the Chinese army, killed people there, shot them. No one said they lined up like a firing squad. 10,000 is a drop in the bucket when you have 1 billion people. Not one U.S. newspaper, television, or radio outlet has reported the comments. So what? They knew the truth. The New York Times knows it's credible. Their own Beijing bureau chief at the time, Nicholas Kristof, confirmed it. An extensive article, China Update, how the hardliners won. Published Sunday Times magazine, November 12, 1989, 5 months after the supposed massacre in the square. At the very end of the long article, which purported to give an inside view of the debate within the Chinese Communist Party leader, Kristof stated categorically, based on my observations in the streets, neither the official account nor many of the foreign versions were quite correct. There is no massacre in Tiananmen Square, for example, although there is plenty of killing elsewhere. Okay. So one person says, no, the account is not correct. Two people. Yet we have footage. It's not a hoax. It's not a hoax in any way, shape, or form. It's a different accounting. In fact, if you go to court and you have eyewitnesses, they're going to give you different accountings, different perspectives. It's, kind of why there's millions of YouTube channels, because even though a lot of us talk about the same things, we have different perspectives in which we approach them. But let's just erase the history. Let's erase the history. And let's talk about that history a little bit with China. And what is going on today and how we are being abused and how the far crazy, psychopathic, disordered left wishes to go to a system of complete control. And mind you, I use that in a broad scale. What I actually understand, which is why I use the language of the synthetic society, or started picking it up, started using it, and it's something I will continue to flesh out, and I might actually even write a pamphlet on it, is that we perceive that Antifa and the far left and this and that are running the things. But that's not it. It's people like Klaus Schwab and Joe Biden and, David Rockefeller and George Soros from the top who have engineered this. And there was a false dichotomy, right? A false dichotomy between capitalism and communism. The real dichotomy is freedom versus slavery. That's the real dichotomy. And there's a false dichotomy of Republican versus Democrat. And if you look at people on the left, they go, look at how the Republicans have bullied us so far, how long they bullied us, and they get away with everything. What are you talking about? The government has been run and infested by leftoids for 100+ years. You're insane. It is objectively true. You can go and look at who's been elected and in power by the numbers. But there was a switch in the parties, Bill. No, there wasn't. Your party has always been trash. The Republicans, depending on who the Republican is, have been trash as well, but not like the consistency that the Democratic Party has put out. 1971, Nixon and the end of the gold standard. This is just a quick summary reminder of what happened. On August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon announced that he was directing directing the Treasury Secretary, John Connally, to suspend, with a few minor exceptions, the convertibility of the dollar into gold by ordering the gold window to be closed. As the convertibility of the dollar and the gold has been closed to citizens in the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, which is illegal and unconstitutional. This action meant the final nail in the coffin for the Bretton system, at least in how it was initially structured, as now foreign governments can no longer exchange their dollar for gold. Now, this is actually unfactual as well, because the Federal Reserve Act still had a gold exchange standard, technically. It wasn't until FDR suspended the gold standard for American citizens, again, illegally, via executive fiat, that we were taken off the gold standard. The magnitude of what this meant to the world should first be examined before we delve into what led to this event. Per the 1944 Bretton Woods Agreement, all currencies were backed by the dollar as the reserve currency, and the dollar was exchangeable for gold for countries, but not people. The foundation of gold still being, at least in theory, the core stability of the financial system. When Nixon made this decision, he was effectively removing all precious metals backing of the dollar and creating an entirely new fiat currency system. Fiat currency systems are systems established by the government and utilize some underlying currency that has no actual intrinsic or or usable value, as gold and silver clearly both do. And it talks about the period of inflation, Vietnam, and we owed money here and there, and people were drawing out. So Nixon did this. Let's go here real quick. Oh no, my ad blocker is interfering. Turn that off for a minute. Hopefully there's no seizure bound ads here. 50 years ago, Nixon temporarily took the dollar off the gold standard. 50 years ago this week, President Richard Nixon shut the gold window and eliminated the last vestige of the gold standard. Nixon ordered Treasury Secretary John Connally to uncouple gold from its $35 fixed price and suspend the ability of foreign banks to directly exchange dollars for gold. That $35 was the price set by FDR and the confiscation of gold. Nixon's order was the end of the path of gold standard and was started during presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt administration. June 5th, 1933 marked the beginning of the slow death of the dollar when Congress enacted a joint resolution erasing the right of creditors in the United States to demand payment in gold, which is a constitutional right because it is the only currency, gold and silver, that are legal under our law. Again, this is just abusing the people, devaluing their money, abusing them, not caring. And then people worship them, worship these folks. Like I talked about earlier about my old buddy Jack I used to shoot pool with. I haven't seen Jack in years. I'm not sure if he's around anymore because I know last time I saw him, he had throat cancer and saw him a lot less often. So God rest his soul if he isn't out there. But yeah, absolutely worshipped FDR. When FDR actually made him poorer, made him less free. In March 1933, the president prohibited banks from paying out or exporting gold, and in April of the same year, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. It was touted as a measure to stop hoarding, but it was, in reality, a massive confiscation scheme because FDR was a freaking fascist. And I mean that technically. The order required private citizens, partnerships, associations, and corporations to turn in all but small amounts of gold to the Federal Reserve in an exchange rate of $20.76 per ounce, which was the stable price of gold for 150 years in America. You know what the price of gold is right now? I don't know. I can look it up, and it's probably about $2,000. That's how much your money has been devalued. And it's only there because the government does weird things with bonds and stuff that to keep it not being hyperinflated. In 1934, the government's fixed price for gold was increased to $35 per ounce, effectively increasing the value of gold on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet by 69%. And this is from Spike Cohen. Someone you should probably follow on Twitter, by the way. This is what happened in 1972. right? For those who don't know what Jack is referring, 1971 is the year that the U.S. began to see a serious decline of the middle class and a massive expansion of income inequality. I had saw a thing of a clip of The Simpsons. I thought about putting in the show today, um, but I'd have to dig it up. Um, I haven't watched Simpsons in years, but they were talking about how the middle class was eroded away, and then they get Robert Reich of all people to gaslight you and abuse you by saying, "Oh no, the middle class went away because of greedy corporations, this, and that, and the other thing." No, it went away because the government's monetary policy, which it has no business making in the first place. Why? Because the government wishes to enslave you in a globalist system. They don't care about you. They care about their control over you. They're pettily jealous of your ability to be free, and they will strip every means from you to do that. You want to be free? You want to do something they don't like? Well, they'll just shoot your kid and your wife. Like, Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge. The reason behind Roosevelt's executive order and the Congressional Joint Resolution was to remove constraints from inflating the money supply. The Federal Reserve Act required all federal notes to have 40% gold backing, but the Fed was low on gold and up against the limit. By increasing its gold stores through the confiscation of private gold holdings, the declare of a high exchange rate, and the Fed could circulate more notes. And of course, it just goes on and on. The dollar has lost more than 85% of its value since Nixon's hateful decision. And then last year and the year prior, the Federal Reserve printed 80% of all, well, what was it, 66, so 70%. I think it might be more though now, of all money. 66%, up nearly 70% of all money ever printed since the 1980s, and injected it into our society and around the world. And now we're laundering that money through Ukraine. And I told you when that happened, when I warned you about this, nearly 2 years ago now, that you were going to start seeing the cost of that 2 years from when it happened. You're starting to see the cost of that right now because this is how it works. You're seeing that and the cost of gas. Now, mind you, there's other factors there, but that's part of the scheme. Remember, we are on the petrodollar. This is all to build up China. And if you start looking into it, there was a statement I saw the other day. I forget where it was at. The Chinese, literally, their State Department's pointing out things that they reject Western liberalism. They're talking about wokeism and all that kind of stuff and culture because they see how it destabilizes our society. And by 2050, they see themselves as the world power. Yeah, I've been telling you that too. And whether it's my intellect or my ability to see something or God just made me a prophet, those things are coming true, folks, and they will continue to come true. And I don't mince words. I tell you straight up how it is. It says, meanwhile, the dollar value of gold has gone from $35 an ounce to just over $1,700 an ounce today. Percentage terms, that is a 4,757% increase. Why do you think wage stagnation has happened? Joe Biden tried to blame the billionaires, right? Like he was Bernie Sanders. Oh, the millionaires and the billionaires. Well, I'm a millionaire now, so I'm just going to say billionaire. Fucking sophist. Oh, there, it came out. It came out. I cussed. Because it pisses me off. It pisses me off. And what pisses me off more is that how fake our society is and how people will just prop it up. They will just go along with it and prop it up. I guess I'm running over, guys. Surprise, surprise. Nixon and China 50 years later, revisiting Nixon's famous trip. I want you to understand this timeline here. August, right? Isn't that what we're looking at here? August 15th, 1971. Yeah, it doesn't have the date there. But from the moment the U.S. President Richard Nixon landed in China on February 21st, 1972, he understood that global politics would undergo transformation that would last well into the 21st century and beyond. So he knew there was going to be a big effect. At this time, folks, China made nothing. They manufactured nothing. They were in squalor. Their people were starving. As a humanitarian act, this was good. As a globalist act and what it means to everyone else, this was bad. This was horrible. China needed to fall on its own face and then be lifted up. That's what happened with Vietnam. Vietnam is a bastion of capitalism right now, freedom. Nixon envisioned China's rise in the article he wrote in Foreign Affairs in 1967. So he knew he wanted to do this long before. You think that he didn't scheme? You think there's not more to this than what's on the surface? And in his post-presidential years, he wrote a series of books in which his view of China's place in the global politics was further refined in response to geopolitical developments. Excuse me, getting a little frog from talking so much. When you listen to Joe Biden talk about China and how great they are and our allies and yada, 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 yada. Think about this. Consider it. Of course, Joe Biden has his hands in China. He's been making money hand over fist there, and that's what it's all about. Enriching himself, his family, basically being part of the upper tier of the elites. That's all it's about. It's about his own prestige. And we know that based on Joe Biden's younger years and his lies about who he was, how he plagiarized other politicians from other nations, and how he said that he was the top of his class in law school, which he was not. He was in the middle. He had no special accommodations, no cum laude or none of that stuff, right? He was average, but he lied because he's a liar. He always has been. His wife, Jill, Dr. Jill, she was with another man. They worked on his campaign, and Joe Biden stole him. Or stole her, I should say. He's not an honorable man. We know now there are text messages and emails between him and his son sharing pornography. That's weird. I don't have any children, or I have children, obviously. I don't have any boys yet. Lord willing, I will. But man, I don't think that's ever going to be a thing between me and my son. Pretty sure. "50 years after opening up China, it is worth revisiting Nixon's evolving estimate of the U.S.-Chinese relations in context of global politics." And it's talk about it's a shame that Nixon never wrote a book about it, blah, 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 blah. But what I want you to see is the timeline here. Because everything ever talked about this is a lie to your face. This was planned. This was planned. And they wanted to build China up as a manufacturer, that is. At the time, Japan was the primary manufacturer. Guess what happened to Japan's economy? It inflated and it crashed, and then China outpaced it, right? And because the CCP has the power it does, it can do things that powerful business elites and politicians like to do very quickly, like disappear folks. In February 1970, he sent a foreign policy report to Congress which stated China should not remain isolated from the international community and opted that it was in the United States' interest, in the interest of peace and stability of Asia and the world, that we take steps to that we can toward improved practical relations with Peking. Why? You didn't do this with Russia. You didn't do it with our neighbors in Cuba, which was once a vacation spot for Americans. Now, mind you, I know we just went through the missile crisis and all those things, but still. Says Nixon understood that overturning 2 decades of hostility between China and the United States would not be swift or without political risks. Mm. Yeah, severe political risk. It would be swift. It happened in a year. It happened within a year. Don't get me wrong. They built relations far longer than that. And we've maintained relations, right? We do everything China wants. Wonder why. Why do you think they hated Trump? It's not just China. Not just China. It's the global order, folks. All right, I'm going to try and read here without coughing to death. Where it first conducted in secret, hold on. Important substantive moves to improve relations, therefore, were first conducted in secret by opening back channels to China via Pakistan and Romanian envoys. Meanwhile, China, for its own reasons, let it be known that it would welcome a visit by the high-level U.S. official. Ultimately, Nixon would select his national security advisor, Henry Kissinger, a noted globalist, and still works in the government, guys, as a bureaucrat. I mentioned Zerbinski a few weeks back and said, he probably does as well behind the scenes. He's dead now. So that's just a misspeak of mine, not realizing or thinking about it. And after I kind of thought about it, I was like, wait a minute. Big Z's dead, isn't he? I was like, oh yeah, I should probably issue a retraction on that, but whatever. I said, I can't always get everything right. I am a human being. But yeah, old Kissinger, to carry out secret talks with China in anticipation of presidential visit. Mind you, Nixon was the first neocon. He was our first neocon president. Ike was not. Ike was trying to balance things at the time. Ike, I believe, was a good guy. He warned about the military-industrial complex. He did some things I wouldn't approve of, but he did help the legitimate Chinese government in Taiwan. Nixon told Kissinger that the biggest diplomatic stumbling block with China would be Taiwan. The biggest domestic political stumbling block would be the conservative reaction within the U.S. to opening relations with the communist regime. Nixon recounts in RN, that's his book or whatever, that preceding his historic visit to China, there are messages and signals, both public and private, sent by both sides for more than 2 years. It was a diplomatic menu that Nixon and Kissinger conducted brilliantly. On May 31st, 1971, Kissinger received a message from Romanians that the Chinese leader Mao Zedong was prepared to meet with Nixon for direct conversations and would welcome Kissinger to China to work out such arrangements with Chinese Premier Zhou. Whatever. When Nixon read the Romanian message, Kissinger remarked, "This is the most important communication that has come to an American president since the end of World War II." Nixon then subtly began to prepare the American public for a historic opening of China, including a speech in Kansas City on July 6, where he told reporters that Chinese potential was so great that no sensible foreign policy could ignore or exclude it. Kissinger secretly traveled to China July 1971. And what happened in August, folks? The gold standard was removed. This is what you're going after. This is what they're going after. The ESG score. This has been pushed and talked about for decades amongst the globalists. And you can look at how it works and how they're rated: environmental, social, and governance. Diversity, inclusion, top thing in social. Greenhouse emissions, the very things that, allow life to proceed. Biodiversity. Deforestation. They're anti-deforestation, mind you. Recycling and waste management. Recycling costs more energy, takes more energy to do than actually save. So dumb, very dumb, unless it's aluminum. Now, mind you, I don't mind not, reusing things instead of, you adding to the landfills or whatever. But that stuff gets absorbed. Like, do you not understand where carbon comes from? It's dead stuff. It's dead matter in the earth. Dead animals, dead plants. And mind you, carbon is what plants like. It's like Brando. It's what they crave. Carbon is a molecule, the molecule of life. It's what makes things organic. And there is no inorganic life. This is what it's about. And companies like Elon Musk, his Tesla company, the Boring Company and all that, they don't have high ESG scores. They're low on the scale. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's because all of this is fake nonsense. Let's see. Shelley says, frequently, recyclables don't have a market and end up being placed in the landfill. All that sorting for nothing. Yeah. Don't sort your recyclables. I've literally been to recycling plants for work. Didn't work in one, just took our stuff there. Worked briefly for a guy who did paper shredding, document shredding. Yeah, it all gets dumped there in the same pile. You're wasting your time. That's how fake this is. They literally tell you to divide it up and to make it, separated and clean it and all this stuff. They don't care. When it gets there, they just put it all together. Folks, it's all fake. It's all fake. All right, guys, I would read through chats, but before Bill gets exposed for sharing porn with son, yeah. Trust me, that'll never happen. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here, man. Oh, look, Strippy has more comments. I love it. I love it. Dude, you're an idiot. Okay? Nobody cares. I love when you other guys get back and forth. Yes, the word tranny is fine. My car has a tranny in it right now, actually. I drive clutch, Anyways, thanks guys for being here. I appreciate it very, very much. I should be back next week. I've had some conversations with my wife about encroaching and infringing upon my time, because I put everybody first, because I do what leaders are supposed to do. I take care of everybody else. But when I take care of everybody else, and I'm not being taken care of, that's a problem, right? So I address that with her, and hopefully the streams will get more consistent. So because I was a bit annoyed Wednesday night when I couldn't stream. And I did stream the Unjustified the Memes. In case you guys didn't know, it just was on Thursday, and it wasn't with Tank. It was with another friend who you might know, old York. But in any case, guys, I appreciate y'all for watching, being with me. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, And I'll be back. I should be back next Sunday at around 3 p.m. All right. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.